All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today, we are ranking the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Infinity Saga. That's from Iron Man up through Spider-Man Far From Home from worst to best. Now, with the prospect of ranking 23 movies from worst to best, I knew that I couldn't do this on my own, so I had to call up a special guest to help me. Now, I knew that I couldn't just call the average Joe, so I call Krazy Joe. Krazy Joe, how are you doing this evening?
All right. How are you?
Good. Krazy Joe is from the MegaPodTastic YouTube channel. You can find him on the MegaPodTastic channel, link in the description, and also through his website, MegaPodTastic.com. Did I get that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So obviously this is going to be a universal list where we both combined ours to make it easier on us to follow along. So, like I said, how I wanted to start is I wanted to start with our introductions to the MCU. So, how did you personally get started with it?
Well, I remember in May of 2008, I was living in Arizona. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, living with my ex-wife, and we always went and saw all the superhero movies when they opened. I think the year before Spider-Man 3 had come out, and I think Rise of the Silver Surfer had been the year before. And the year before that was Superman Returns. And it's just, if a superhero movie came out, we were there opening day. So we were there opening day for Iron Man. And it's funny how time changes perceptions of things. Because I do remember when Iron Man came out, it wasn't this universally loved movie. I mean, it did really well at the box office and people liked it. But that summer, it was very much eclipsed by The Dark Knight. Because The Dark Knight came out the same summer as Iron Man. And I remember it was like The Dark Knight was the movie to see that summer. And oh yeah, Iron Man was pretty good too. But now here we are years later and we look back and Iron Man is considered this groundbreaking film. And it's just funny how time changes perceptions.
That is true. I forgot about the Dark Knight. I actually didn't see the Dark Knight till about 2010, 2011. So, because I was pretty young for the Dark Knight back in '08. So I'm gonna age you a bit. I was in the 5th grade when Iron Man came out. Yes, I am only 23. So yeah, the day that Iron Man opened for me, it was actually a half day at my school. So my dad picked me up and just threw me in the car and said, "All right, we're going to the theater." It's like, for what? And it's like, to see Iron Man. It's like, I'm on board. Because prior to this, the only Marvel movies I'd seen in the theaters were Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer was the first one to come to mind. I didn't see the first one because I had to get permission from my dad at the time in order to watch PG-13 movies. But obviously by '08, it's like, yeah, sure, whatever, just let's go. And I had no idea that it was going to build up to the Avengers even back then. Because if you remember, post-credit scenes were not a thing back then. So apparently there was, like with Nick Fury and, Mr. Stark, you have stumbled upon this world that is vastly bigger than yours.
I was just telling my daughter this week, in fact, yesterday, in fact, I was telling my daughter that the real game changer, and it gets forgotten, but the real game changer was the Incredible Hulk. Not Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, because yes, at the end credits of Iron Man, we do have Nick Fury show up and he says, you've just joined this whole universe. But talk is cheap. You can say that. You can say, oh, you've just joined this whole universe. It doesn't mean you're going to follow through, because Batman Forever referenced Metropolis. Batman tells Robin, oh, the circus must be halfway to Metropolis by now. Doesn't mean that they followed through and had Batman meet Superman. It's like, yeah, you can kind of, until you make the actual crossover, it's nothing but an Easter egg. And yeah, the Sam Jackson thing was cool, but was it June or July? I think it was June. Yeah, maybe it was July. I don't know. In June or July of '08, just a couple months after Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk opened. And Tony Stark showed up. And that made Incredible Hulk a huge deal because it was the first time two superhero movies had ever literally crossed over, and we saw a character from one show up in another and acknowledged, hey, guess what? These guys are definitely in the same universe. So yeah, it's a shame because I think Incredible Hulk gets forgotten, but it's like that summer, I remember it was the 1-2 punch. Hulk wasn't as beloved of a movie, but Hulk was the one where the crossover first happened because we saw Tony Stark show up. That had
Yeah,
never
at the end
happened
of the
before.
bar.
Yeah, that had never happened before.
Yeah, and he drops the file and says, I'm looking to form a new team, and it has the Avengers logo on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just looked up Incredible Hulk. It came out in June of '08.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just about a month after Iron Man. And
yeah.
on the topic of DC, I'm a little too young to remember this, but weren't like Batman Begins and Superman Returns like supposed to cross over theoretically?
There were rumors. I don't know that any firm plans were ever in place. I always say the the DC universe's greatest enemy. People don't like to hear this. People get mad at me when I say this, but I always say the DC universe's greatest enemy was Christopher Nolan because Christopher Nolan wasn't a team player. And DC did kind of want to build a universe, but Christopher Nolan kept saying, no, 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 no. My Batman exists in his own world and does not cross over with other heroes. And Warner Brothers gave him whatever he wanted. And that basically put them years behind the curve because whereas they could have been emulating what Marvel was doing with Superman and Batman right away, it was Christopher Nolan who put that roadblock up. So people always years later are like, oh, well, DC's always trying to catch up with Marvel. And it's like, well, they wouldn't necessarily be doing that if Christopher Nolan hadn't stuck a giant roadblock and said, no, no, you're not doing this. So, but yeah, I think that would have been cool because you reintroduced Batman and Batman Begins, and the very
Mm-hmm.
next year you reintroduced Superman and Superman Returns. And if Christopher Nolan hadn't been such a jerk about it, you could have immediately started building your Justice League right there with Brandon Routh and Christian Bale. But it was not to be.
Yeah, because many people forget there was supposed to be a Justice League movie around that time too that George Miller was doing, but then it got
Yeah.
canned due to the writer's strike.
Yep.
So they could have been the Avengers before the Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, before we dwell on DC for too long, you want to get into the ranking of the MCU?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right.
Never fails.
Mm.
The dog whines that he needs my help, and then he does it on his own when I stand up to help him.
Yeah. All right. So
Sorry.
let's get. Yeah, that's fine. I was a former pet owner, so I can what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Whatever it is. I know I'm gonna get screamed at now, but whatever. So right into the MCU ranking. Number 23 should not come as a shock to anybody. Thor: The Dark World. You and I both agreed that this is number 23, so I'm gonna go ahead
Yeah.
and let you start. So.
Well, first of all, I like Thor: The Dark World. I always say when you have 20 good things, it's still 20 good things, but one of those good things is going to be the least good thing of the bunch. I would stack Thor: The Dark World up against a lot of the superhero movies we've seen, like Batman and Robin, which I think is one of the worst movies of all time. Or the new Hellboy that just came out last year. I mean, Thor: The Dark World, it's not a train wreck. It's not a horrible movie. It's just the least good of what Marvel has given us. So yeah, I don't hate it, but it's definitely the weakest.
Wait, so with Batman and Robin, you didn't like the whole "I to meet you"? Ha ha ha.
I like it ironically, but I mean it's not good. It's not good, but it's entertaining.
All right, everyone, chill.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age.
Oh yeah, that was good. But no, what did Thor: The Dark World end for me was when Loki died. Because that scene when he gets stabbed in the back and dies in Thor's arms is such an emotional scene, and then they retcon it 5 minutes later with, oh, Loki was disguised as Odin the whole time. Da da da
Now, you
da.
see, I thought that was a clever twist had they done something with it, but they didn't really
Mm-hmm.
do anything with it then. Ragnarok, we just kind of
Yeah. Oh,
immediately.
Oh, Odin's in the old folks' home.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I don't know, you could have gone somewhere with that where you could have. Is that coming through on the mic? Are you hearing that?
What? The cat?
You know, the dog crying behind me.
Oh,
I
uh,
apologize. Give me 1 second.
okay.
I'm sorry about that.
You're fine.
I
All
think
right.
he's good.
So, okay. Yeah. So yeah, where were we?
You were saying that Loki um, posing as
Mm-hmm.
Odin. And
Yeah.
they could have done something with that. They could have. They could have. I don't know. Yeah, I think there's stories to be told there. They it, that ending would have aged better.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on Thor: The Dark World, that ending would have aged better if it had led into some really cool story about Loki posing as Odin. But it
Mm-hmm.
did. So in retrospect, it was just nothing but a shock ending. It was what the hey, it was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other issue with it is that they also killed Loki in the first Thor movie, and then Ult brought him back to life in end credits for Avengers, and then they kill him again. Then they retcon at the very end. So by the time they finally do kill Loki, it's like, okay. Is he actually going to stay down this time, or are we going to, see a magical return in Endgame, kind of
Yep.
thing? Whoops! Spoiler on that one. By the way, this list might contain spoilers in the rankings.
Oh, I think
Kind of,
everybody's seen these movies by now, though. So
yeah, but you always get that one guy. Spoilers bad. So is everything that? So are we good on the Dark World?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Something interesting came to light recently. You know, Patty Jenkins,
Mm-hmm.
um, who went on to direct Wonder Woman, she was supposed to direct Thor: The Dark World,
Yeah, because
and
isn't that the only reason like Natalie Portman even signed on to do it?
yeah, yeah. Natalie Portman really wanted Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins was approached, and Patty Jenkins was attached, I think, for a minute, and then left due to quote unquote creative differences.
Yeah.
And apparently Natalie Portman was pretty pissed about it that Patty Jenkins didn't end up directing. Well, just recently, Patty Jenkins revealed why she didn't do the movie, and it was because she hated the script, and she felt that as a woman working in Hollywood, a bad movie would be blamed on her because
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg makes a bad movie. It's Steven Spielberg. He's going to get another shot. But I mean, she made a movie that was nominated for Oscars in like '07 or '06 with Monster. And then she didn't work
Yeah.
for almost a decade. So it's like, okay, if my follow-up feature is this big budget superhero movie and it fails, they're going to be like, oh, well, she was the wrong choice. So she's like, she read the script and was like, I knew I couldn't make a good movie out of this. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. That just came out like a week or two ago.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't see that one at all. One more point I feel that should be made about Thor: The Dark World. This is the first movie with the Infinity Stones.
Ah, yes, yes.
So this whole Infinity Saga really started here because whereas in Phase One, all it was we're just going to get up to the Avengers. Now it was later revealed that the Tesseract was yet another Infinity Stone, but I don't think they thought of that while making Thor or
Right,
even the Avengers.
right.
It was just kind of a, oh yeah, this thing here, we got to make this work now.
Exactly.
So at least give the Dark World credit where credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is when we later get to Endgame, Thor: The Dark World takes on a prominence that we didn't expect. And I think one of the funniest things about Endgame is immediately after people saw Endgame, I think the reaction of a good large portion of the fan base was, geez, now I got to go back and watch Thor: The Dark World again.
Hmm. uh, yeah, so before we dwell on this for too long, let's just move on to number 22. And unfortunately, it's Black Panther. You ranked this at 21. I ranked it at 15. And just to show the camera, I am sporting a T'Challa shirt. So
Absolutely.
I'll let you start this one again. Why rank it at 21?
I I think it's I think it's the most overrated film in the Marvel Cinematic
Yeah.
Universe. People go nuts for this movie. It was obviously uh, nominated for Best Picture. I really don't think it deserves it. I like Chadwick Boseman in the role of Black Panther. I think he's great in the role. I think he was terrific in Civil War. But this movie is frankly boring. That's my problem with it. Is it's a boring movie. It really lacks action aside from two scenes. We have the scene in the casino where were they? I don't remember
South
where they.
Korea,
South
Seoul.
Korea. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So they went to the South Korea in the casino, and then the car chase afterwards. That was a pretty good action scene. And then the finale. The finale was a good action scene. The rest of the movie was very dry. There was not a lot of action, and also the Marvel Cinematic Universe is known for its use of humor, and I didn't feel this was a very humorous film. It lacked action and it lacked humor. The most humorous one was his sister Shuri. She was great. She was hilarious. I loved her, but she didn't get enough screen time. So I think it kind of lacked two of the main trademarks of what you look for in a Marvel movie, which is action and humor. It just it felt too dry to me, which is a shame because I liked the character and I liked the actor in that role, and I'm really hoping that I like Black Panther 2 a lot more.
Yeah. I actually take a different approach with Black Panther. I actually found it great that we finally get a break from the humor because one thing I hated, and this was prevalent in Doctor Strange, was they'd be in the middle of a fist fight and then mid punch they would break for a joke and then go right back to the fight. So without all that humor there, it actually lets the story and the characters kind of rise up, at least to me.
See, I don't know. I needed something. If there wasn't going to be more humor, I think I needed more action. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it felt off to me.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
the main problem with this movie is to me it had a great setup with, Claw and okay, we're going to invade Wakanda, steal the tech and take it from the black market. Then you kill off Claw halfway through the movie, and then it turns into this whole other thing with Michael B. Jordan and what was his name? Killmonger,
yeah,
where he's going to go back and reclaim the throne because his father is the same as T'Challa's or however that worked out. And it's like, okay, I know where this is going.
yeah, another problem is it opened in, what was it, February 2018? Is that right?
Yeah.
February 2018? Okay. In November 2017, just a couple months before, Marvel gave us a movie with the exact same story, and that is Thor Ragnarok.
Hmm.
Because both movies, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, are about an unknown family member coming and reclaiming the throne, and the hero goes into exile and eventually has to come back and try to win their throne back. And so it's like we got that in November with Thor Ragnarok, and then we got it again in February, and I'm like, you just told this story like 2 months ago. You literally just told this same story.
Hmm.
That was my other.
And this movie, to me, if Marvel had a villain problem, this one showcased a hero problem with Black Panther. Because in this one, he is incredibly overpowered. Like his suit can just absorb any bullet that he can take and absorbs it into kinetic energy. Whereas at least in the comics, the reason why he had to hunt at night was because he could absorb a few bullets, but he takes enough damage, it's still going to kill him. Because that's how T'Challa originally claimed the throne, as Black Panther was his father died in action, and part of the thing is to avenge his father. Same with how that happened in Civil War.
Right.
Mm. Yeah, his father died preventing an invasion, and so T'Challa takes up the mantle of "I will protect Wakanda," and then all of a sudden at the end, it's like, oh, now we're going to have this outreach center and just open it up to the world. It's like, but aren't you trying to keep it secret so your technology doesn't get out, so that it's not the end of mankind as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my only real issue with that ending. I get why it's there, but again,
I've also heard people complain that the CGI in it wasn't very good. That's a
yeah,
complaint that I can't get on board with. I thought it looked fine. I don't know what people are talking about when they say it looked like people. I've heard people say it looked unfinished. I don't see that.
I compare complaining CGI in movies to complaining about graphics in video games, unless if they are like glaringly bad, nobody notices.
Yeah, a good example is everyone made fun of Henry Cavill's CGI'd mustache in Justice
Yeah.
League. There's really only one shot in the whole movie where it's super conspicuous. And that's the very, very, very opening shot of the movie where the kids have him and
Hmm.
are interviewing him on the cell phone. It looks atrocious. The rest of the movie, it's frankly not that bad. People really, I, I don't know. People are too picky, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, or they just want something to complain about, something to stick because, oh, look, bad CGI. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whereas, whereas very few people are going to genuinely notice. Because was it a good movie? Yeah. Like everyone complaining about the CGI in like the prequel trilogy, or even do you remember Die Another Day when James Bond is riding the wave
Yes. Yes.
and everybody was like complaining about it, but it's like, guys, this was 2002 CGI.
Well,
You can't compare.
the
Huh?
worst I've ever seen, and it looked bad by the day's standards too. Like the Mummy Returns at the very end when the Rock came out as the Scorpion King.
Oh
I've
yeah,
never seen worse CGI in a movie. Like maybe on a sci-fi movie that aired on Sci-Fi Channel Saturday night. Okay,
yeah.
but in a big screen. And the funny thing with Mummy Returns is the special effects look great at the beginning of that movie and terrible towards the end. So it literally looks like they started running out of money as they were going.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, the Scorpion King, it was like glaringly obvious that this is CGI. It's like, okay. uh so yeah, I think everything on Black Panther needed to really be said on it. Unless if you want to add
Absolutely.
any final thoughts.
No, not really. I just I was I it's weird because I think it's in my bottom three. It's in my bottom three of Marvel movies, and I always hear people saying, "Oh, top five among the best," and I'm like,
Yeah.
really, really?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's incredibly overrated. Now I do rank it pretty high, mostly because obviously you can tell by the shirt I am a Black Panther fan, have been since I read the comics in the early 2000s. So that's kind of my bias toward him. And I really did like his intro in Civil War.
Oh yeah,
That was that
absolutely.
was the that was the proper way to get T'Challa to take over the throne. Because then at least it kind of goes back to the comics, and it's the same thing. I'm going to avenge my father.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you ready for number 21? I think
Sure.
you're gonna. I think you're gonna be disappointed in this one. Spider-Man: Homecoming. You ranked it at 14. I ranked it at 22.
Yeah, no, I didn't like it as much as Far From Home. I thought Far From Home was better, but yeah, I did. I really like that one. In fact, I'd probably say it's probably my third favorite Spider-Man movie.
Really, what are your other two?
My favorite is Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man
Yeah.
2. I still don't think they've topped that, but my number two would be Far From Home.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were gonna say like Spider-Man 3 for a second. With the whole Evo Peter Parker. Hey. Yeah,
Spider-Man
the, the,
3.
the, the, yep, jazz hands.
But that at least is still better than Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah, but
Spider-Man 3 at least has some saving graces. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
can't
yeah.
name a
The
one with Amazing.
yeah, Gwen Stacy, Sandman was a great villain
Yeah, yeah.
because at
Good.
least they made him connect to Spider-Man and actually made him more human than someone like Doc Ock or Green Goblin, where Green Goblin was just a nut job.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Spider-Man: Far From Home. My issue with it is that Peter Parker's not Spider-Man in these movies. He's Iron Boy.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that completely, which is why I'll be honest with you, everyone else in the world was freaking out. I was actually a little excited to hear that the Marvel MCU deal had broken down and that Sony was going to make Spider-Man, what do we call it? If I say Spider-Man 3, everyone's going to think I'm talking about Tobey Maguire.
Let's just call it
Spider
John Watts' Spider-Man 3.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I was
Hmm.
excited to see that made just by Sony without Marvel's input because thinking, well, if they can't reference Tony Stark,
Hmm.
that's not necessarily a bad thing because it
Yeah.
means he gets to be Spider-Man again. They've totally made him Spider-Man or Iron Man Jr. And as much as I love the movie, and I do love the movie, but there's one scene in Far From Home that's really bad. And it's the scene where he's on the ship making his new spider armor and he's doing it
Yeah.
exactly like Tony would do it. And you just see
Hmm.
Happy Hogan smiling, like as if he's thinking in his head, ah, Tony is back. Tony has returned to us. And it's so yeah, I was actually excited for the Marvel Sony deal to end, but to get a more Spider-Man. But generally
Hmm.
speaking, I do like the movies though.
Yeah. Yeah, they also removed all the character aspects of Peter Parker that made him interesting. Because in this movie, he's not bullied at all. Flash Thompson isn't a school bully. Then we have Michelle Jones as MJ, who's just very like emo all the time. Oh yeah, man, kind of thing. Also, the Vulture's daughter, what was her name? Liz Allen.
Yeah.
Liz Allen. That is not the same Liz Allen that would go on to marry Harry Osborn. Because how's she gonna marry Harry Osborn if she's all the way over in Oregon? Kind of thing.
Well, she could move back.
Yeah, that's
She could
true.
she could move back. Oh, and I mean, we know her father is still in the. I mean, he went to
Yeah.
prison in New York, so her she come
Yeah,
back to visit dad.
I was kind of hoping in Far From Home that he would like break out and we would just see Michael Keaton's Vulture again because I loved Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Well, it does look like they're trying to build up the Sinister Six because I mean, he shows up in the trailer for Morbius. So
Okay.
they're bringing him back in Morbius. So I've heard speculation that Sony is going to use Michael Keaton as Vulture again when they do their Sinister Six movie.
Okay. Are they going to use Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio or no?
That's a good question. I guess
Actually how would they do it? Because spoiler alert for Far From Home, he did die at the end.
he did, unless his death was an illusion.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'll get to Far From Home later. But yeah, I just felt like, all the characters in the Spider-Man movie were just, oh, we're going to take names like Liz Allen and Betty Brant and Flash Thompson and apply them to characters that just, don't have the same characteristics.
Well, that's a thing that's been happening for a long time now, and it's something that kind of bugs me because I'm always like, well, what do you think these names are? Like, do
Hmm.
you think people, what do you think people, I would say, what do you think people are fans of? Do you think they're fans of just the name?
Hmm.
Because if you change something that dramatically, is it the same character? And you go, well, it's a new take on it. It's like, well, is it a new take on it? Or did you just take a familiar name and build a new character around it? I always use the example of the Supergirl TV show has this character named James Olsen who doesn't
Hmm.
act at all like Jimmy Olsen. Now, people get hung up over the fact that they changed the race. I've complained about this, and I've had
Hmm.
people tell me, "Oh, well, that's just racist. You're complaining because he's a black man now." And it's like, no, 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 that's not my complaint. My complaint is he doesn't act like Jimmy Olsen. He's
Hmm.
like, he's cool. and confident and suave, and the ladies think he's sexy and they're interested in him. Jimmy Olsen was a dork. He was a nerd. He was the youngest one. He was the screw up. He was the one who Superman had to save all the time. So it's like you've literally stripped the character of everything that makes him Jimmy Olsen, but you're still using the name. So
Hmm.
what makes that character James Olsen other than the name? Because I don't see any of the characteristics at all from the comic.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like to actually expand on that and talk about more like character dynamics as well. Did you ever watch Charmed back in the day?
I did not.
Okay, but do you know what it's about?
Yeah, it was the sisters. They were
Yeah.
witches.
Yeah, the three sisters, and then Rose McGowan came in to replace Shannon Doherty, and she was the unnamed fourth sister.
Right.
And back to your point of, what are people fans of? Are they fans of just the character name or the actual characters? So obviously, in the original Charmed, at least all four of the sisters looked like they could be related. And then in the new Charmed, they're just like, now we're going to scrap that, have one white, one black, and one Mexican. And I don't mean to take this into a race issue, but the common question at the time was, wait a minute, how are all of these characters even related now?
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely weird.
Yeah, because part of it too is also going back to, believability. Yeah, you have a suspension of disbelief for some things, like, let's go back to Spider-Man and the whole like rights issue. Okay, so let's say they had changed the characters because of the copyrights. Okay, that's fine, but when you change it too much just for the sake of change, it's just like, wait a minute, why are you doing this again?
Yeah, yeah. Another example, again from Supergirl. I think Supergirl is the most egregious offender. In like the second season, they introduced a character named Snapper Carr. Now, Snapper Carr was a character in the comics, but the
Mhm.
Snapper Carr they introduced on Supergirl was like a guy in his late 40s who was a grizzled, hard-edged veteran reporter, no nonsense type, reporter. Well, that's not who Snapper Carr was. Snapper Carr was this beatnik kid who used to hang out with the Justice League. Now, obviously you're making something in 2018, where I think that was 2017, 2018, whenever that was. You're not going to have the character be a beatnik kid because that's going to seem really out of place in the modern day. But
Mhm.
you can kind of slide it to an equivalent. Like the beatnik kid would have been the cool kid. So Snapper Carr should be like, I don't know, maybe like what's cool today. I'm a 40-year-old guy. I don't know. Whatever like
Um.
today's equivalent to like what that kind of a cool hipster type guy in, there it should be an equivalency,
Mhm.
but a balding 40-year-old newspaper editor, that's it's like, why did you even use that name? And you can't
Mhm.
even say for name recognition because 90% of the people don't even know who the hell Snapper Carr is. He's an obscure character to begin with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you say what's cool nowadays? Well, what's cool nowadays is watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe and quoting the first appearance of Wolverine was the Incredible Hulk number 181, last page, last panel. I only know that from Comic Book Man. uh, so, anyways, moving on, our number 20 is Avengers Age of Ultron. You ranked it at 15 and I ranked it at 20.
Yeah, I think we could all agree it's the weakest Avengers movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
like
don't
it.
think anyone's going to argue with you there.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a fine movie. I don't dislike it. I know it got some stupid criticisms at the time, like people were criticizing, oh, they made Black Widow a damsel in distress. No, they didn't. She had that
Yeah.
great scene on the
Oh,
motorcycle. Oh, you dropped your shield. She had so many great moments in that movie.
yeah,
But
weren't people even criticizing her because she had like that moment at the farmhouse where, oh, I'm never going to have children, talking with Hawkeye, who's got the wife and two kids?
right, right. People were saying like,
Hmm.
the claim was that she was saying that made her a monster, that she couldn't have kids, and it's like that's not what she was saying. You're kind of taking the quote and changing the context. That's not what she
Hmm.
was getting at. But yeah, I don't know. I think that movie got beat up more than it should have, and
Mhm.
And Joss Whedon, I'm a huge Joss Whedon fan. I
Yeah.
love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love Joss Whedon, and it's one of his weaker works. There's no question.
Mhm.
I think Justice League gets beat up all the time, but Justice League was also directed by Joss Whedon. I think that's a better movie than Age of Ultron. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, I don't hate it. It's got its moments, but it's not the strongest effort.
Yeah. Well, one of my big issues, because you remember around this time, everybody was criticizing Marvel for not killing off any of their characters. Like they would kill them off, and then we're gonna bring them back to life.
Right.
Like Pepper Potts in Iron Man 3 when she takes like the 40 or 50 foot drop into that molten whatever it was, and then she just like walks out. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, okay, we're gonna introduce two new characters, Scarlet Witch and Quick. And oh crap, we need to kill a character off. Quicksilver, see ya, buddy. And it's like, see, guys, we actually now finally killed off a character. Granted, we just introduced him and didn't do anything with them, but look, we killed somebody.
We should also point out, when did Age of Ultron, was that 2014?
No, that was 15.
2015. Okay, well, the year before, in
Mhm.
2014, X-Men Days of Future Past opened.
Yeah.
And that was the War of the Quicksilvers, because both Fox and Disney had the
Yep.
rights to Quicksilver because he was both an X-Men character and an Avengers character. So we got two different versions of Quicksilver a year apart. And the funny thing was, going into it, everybody was like, "Oh, well, Quicksilver is going to be cooler in the Marvel universe because Marvel does these things better." And it turned out that wasn't true at all. The X-Men version of Quicksilver was amazing. They did that great
Hmm.
time in a bottle sequence, and it was like, and I remember the next year, Days of Future Past opened the year before The Flash premiered on TV. And I remember
Hmm.
saying, "Oh my God, The Flash has just been put on notice," because it's like, hey, you got a super speedster? We got a super speedster. Yeah, top this. And it's just that Marvel comes out
Oh,
with their Quicksilver, and it was like, I think everyone just agreed, like, "Oh, we like the one of the X-Men movies better." So
yeah. Yeah, yeah, because yeah, you bring up Fox X-Men. I love that scene. Is it in Apocalypse when he puts on his Walkman and his earbuds and then the Sweet
Sweet
Dreams and
Dreams.
he's just
Oh
running
yeah.
around?
And that's the funny
Yeah,
thing
that
is,
was
because
great.
Apocalypse, in one way, in many ways, the Apocalypse scene, it was just kind of more of the same because they had just done it in the previous film, but it was
Mhm.
even better when they did it in Apocalypse. It's
Yes.
like you took it; it was great in Days of Future Past, but you just like raised the bar and made it even better this time around.
Hold on, guys. Do, do, do.
My
Start
biggest
running.
complaint in Dark Phoenix was that Quicksilver didn't get one of those scenes again. I was like, "Oh, I wanted one of those Quicksilver scenes."
uh, yeah, the funny part is Dark Phoenix is the only Fox X-Men movie I've yet to see. I got it on
Well, I just
Prime
spoiled
and
that.
haven't put it in. Nah, I don't.
If
I
there's a
don't
part
care.
of me, there's a part of me that hopes that maybe with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, because the title is Multiverse of Madness, there's
Yeah.
a part of me that's hoping that they're going to bring the Fox X-Men into the Marvel universe through a multiverse, and that we'll get Quicksilver back, but the X-Men version of Quicksilver. Like, I want to
Yeah.
see when season 2 of WandaVision shows up on Disney Plus, like 2 years from now or whatever. I want the X-Men version of Quicksilver to show up as her brother from another dimension.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's address the elephant in the room with Age of Ultron. I really felt that this movie was largely forgettable.
Uh, yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
except for the where were they? Were they in Slovakia where that city came up out of the ground? Because I know that was mentioned later on.
Yeah, in Civil War, the Slovak
Yeah.
words. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Or was it the Sokovia Accords? I don't remember.
Sokovia. Yeah, yeah. I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
That's Sokovia. That sounds
what
better. Yeah.
whatever. The MCU fanboys are now gonna be pissed at us because we can't remember that.
I got an excuse. I'm old.
Yeah.
I don't remember what
Well,
I had for lunch today.
well, I got an excuse. I haven't seen the movie since 2015, so yeah. All right, so yeah, moving on to our number 19 is Ant-Man. I
Ant-Man.
ranked this at six. I ranked this at 16. You ranked it at 18, so we're not too far off each other here.
Yeah, I like it. It's good. It's entertaining. It's a lot of fun. I
Hmm.
think the second one's better. But yeah, no, it was not much to say there. I know people, this is another one of those movies that people were like, oh, they're making Ant-Man. Well, that's going to suck. Ant-Man, he
Yeah.
gets small. People made fun of that movie. And it's like, I just trust Kevin Feige. He's given us too many good movies now. I trust I know he knows what he's doing. And it was entertaining. It was funny. Paul Rudd was great
Yeah.
in part. Yeah, just all around entertaining. And that was probably the first example. I know other films did it first. There was Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy did it first. But Ant-Man was one of the first movies where we saw the de-aging technology when we had those
Yeah.
scenes in 1989. And I mean, like I said, it was done in Tron Legacy, but not nearly as good. That was the first time we saw it and we're like, "Oh
Hmm.
wow, this looks amazing."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, oh, I'll tell
Yeah.
you
I
what
was.
I really like in Ant-Man was the cameo appearance by Garrett Morris. Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live had the quick cameo as the cab driver when he landed on the cab, and I thought
Mhm.
that was hilarious because did you pick up on that cameo? I don't know. You're a little younger. I don't know.
I'm not an SNL fan, so I wouldn't pick up on it.
Okay, back in the 70s, Garrett Morris might be the only previous live action Ant-Man because they did a skit on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s where all the superheroes were at a party. And John Belushi was the Hulk, and I think like Bill Murray was like Superman, But Garrett Morris played Ant-Man, and the other superheroes were making fun of him. And they're like, "So what's your power, Ant-Man?" And he goes, "I could shrink to the size of an ant and retain my human strength." And the other superheroes are going, "Ha, ha, ha. You hear that? He's got human strength." So
Uh-huh. And
it,
and
it,
and Analog Spider-Man kind of
yeah,
thing.
Ant-Man was like just the butt of the joke, and then it was just funny because Garrett Morris, who'd played Ant-Man in that Saturday Night Live skit, was the cab driver when he landed on the cab. I just was like, I remember in the theater, I was going, "Oh, that's great!"
So we could effectively say Ant-Man was like the Aquaman of its time kind of thing, where Aquaman just got made fun of throughout the 2000s with, what is your powers, like in that Family Guy skit where the woman's getting raped on the beach. Oh, help! You better not do it! I'm going to summon my fish friends and all the little tadpoles.
You're lucky you're not doing that in the ocean.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, but one thing I actually only saw this movie really because Michael Douglas was in it, and I'm a lifelong fan of Michael Douglas because I grew up on classic TV as well, and I remember watching reruns of Streets of San Francisco back in the day. So that was
Yeah.
my only real drive to actually watch Ant-Man. And another issue that I really had with it is to me it felt like more of a Disney movie instead of a Marvel movie. If you picked up on it, kind
That's
of like a
fair.
kind of like a remake of a Honey I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing.
Well, I have been saying for years that I thought Disney should get if he was willing to do it, because obviously he's very elusive these days. But I said for years Disney should try to get Rick Moranis
Hmm.
to be in Ant-Man 3 as Professor Wayne Zelinsky and reveal that he and Henry Pym were like lab partners. Because if you look, the flashback scenes at the beginning of Ant-Man took place in 1989, which is the year
Hmm.
Honey I Shrunk the Kids came out. So there's believability there that Wayne
Yes.
Zelinsky could have been in on that project. So I think that would be hilarious. And Disney obviously owns the rights to all of them, so they can make that happen. I think that would get a cheer from the audience if Rick Moranis showed up in like Ant-Man 3 and they made that connection.
Yeah. Didn't Rick Moranis retire because his wife had died or something like that?
He did, and he's coming back now to do Honey, I Shrunk
Okay.
the Kids 4. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 4 is going into production, and he is going to make his first movie in over 20 years now.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I know that that for the longest time he just like, no, guys, I'm done because I want to raise my kids kind of thing.
Right. He was doing voice work. Like he did some a couple Disney cartoons. Like he would do cartoon voices, but that's about it.
Yeah. So one thing I have to ask you about Ant-Man, because this movie revolves around a lot of like that heist. What did you think of the heist itself?
I was fine. It was fine. Yeah, here's one thing I'll say. A lot of a lot of the story beats reminded me a little too much of the first Iron Man. The villain, Yellow
Yeah.
Jacket, he really seemed like he kind of was Obadiah Stane all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't. It was just very, like I said, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther were very similar. I got the same vibe from Ant-Man. I was like, oh, this is kind of Iron Man again.
Yeah, because yeah, you just said that, and one thing I remember in the first Iron Man when he tried going up into the atmosphere and the suit froze,
Yeah.
and then in this Iron Man, it's like you can't shrink down to the size of that quantum realm because you go that far, you're never gonna get back out. And what does he do? He shrinks down that far, and then he comes back out, just like Iron Man figured out the way to handle the freezing.
Right.
Yeah, I just remembered that. So
And
yeah,
it's the partner that you're in on it with who tries to take over and wants you out. It's like, oh,
yeah.
this is kind of the same motivations, and I don't know. But generally speaking, I like the feel of doing it as a heist film. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and Michael
Hmm.
Pena, he was so great in the
Oh
movie.
my god. Yeah, whenever he would like recount the stories too, it's like that was the best part
Yeah.
in both of the movies, especially his recap of the entire first movie, like 2 minutes.
Supposedly, I don't know when we're going to get to see it, but Kevin Feige claims that there is a video that we will someday see of Michael Pena as his Ant-Man character telling the story of the entire Infinity Saga from start to finish
Yeah.
in that style.
Yeah, I hope that they do that because that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So anything further on Ant-Man, or you think we're good?
No, I think that's we covered it.
All right. So number 18, one you're gonna get mad at again is Spider-Man Far From Home. You ranked this at number 9. I ranked it at number 21 myself. So
Yeah, I really liked that one. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I think Mysterio is one of the best villains they've ever had in the MCU. I think he's one of the best villains we've ever seen in a Spider-Man movie, which is amazing because I remember people always said that that was a character that would be hard to bring to the screen, and I agreed. Like I always thought, well, yeah, he is kind of a tricky character to crack, but I think they did it amazingly well. And I liked the idea of tying him to Tony Stark. Like I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah.
Bringing back Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story as the guy, Tony Stark built that in the cave. Yeah, that guy. Uh, yeah, I really like this movie. The humor. Oh my god, I laughed start to finish. Night Monkey, the whole Night Monkey thing was cracking me up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love this movie. I love this movie.
Yeah.
I had same complaints about they play up the Iron Man Jr. thing a little too much. I kind of want him to be
Mhm.
Spider-Man, not Iron Man Jr. But that's really
Mhm.
my only complaint.
Yeah, because yeah, like you said, I think that the Spider-Man movies in the MCU have the best villains with Michael Keaton's Vulture and Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. That can't be taken away from these movies. And I also did like the idea of the elementals and the whole using that was it that projection technology so that
Yeah,
Mysterio can just be the hero because hey, in these times people will believe anything, which
right.
is true. So, and it's also kind of timeless in that sense because it's not like, this is only pertaining to 2019. It could even pertain to now with the whole, COVID-19 pandemic and any other future pandemic. It's like, yeah, people will believe anything you tell them. Like, um, not meaning to age it, but did you hear the story about that pastor on the television saying, I can cure you of coronavirus through your television screen kind of thing?
I didn't.
And how many people bought into that?
I didn't, but I didn't hear about that. But I do remember. I remember when I was a kid, there was this guy who was always on TV, some televangelist who was always saying he was going to cure people through the TV, and he'd be like, "Put your hand on the screen on mine, and we will pray together." And he'd say he was going to
Mm,
cure you of everything. And I always wondered, I'm like,
yeah,
wonder if any how would anyone know? How would anyone know if this guy cured them or not? You know, it's like, how
yeah.
would you know?
Yeah, have you ever seen what was it My Name is Earl where he got that kid to like cure the people or something like that?
I never
Did
saw
you ever
that.
watch that?
I saw
Oh,
that show off and on.
oh yeah, it was kind of the same thing where it's like, power of God, power of God, power of God, cured. And then the guy would just like rise up and start dancing and it all turned out to be a sham. Yeah. Uh, yeah, anyway, back to Spider-Man. Me personally, I put both of these movies on the same level of bad, largely because to me this isn't Spider-Man. If I want to watch a Spider-Man movie, I'm going to go back and watch the Sam Raimi trilogy before I go back and rewatch these personally, because this one you lose the homemade feel to Spider-Man. Because part of Spider-Man was he built the suit himself, and in this one it's all metallic, or he's got all these gadgets that previously weren't there. I do like how they did add the nets in between the arms and the legs to give him the gliding ability. At least that part from the comics came back that the Sam Raimis didn't have.
Yeah, I do. I think Tom Holland feels like Spider-Man to me. He just feels like Spider. I feel like in terms of performance, I think Tom Holland's the best Spider-Man because Tobey Maguire was nerdy enough, but he wasn't. Spider-Man was always known for his wisecracks, and Tobey Maguire kind of lacked that. The Tobey Maguire version wasn't always wisecracking, and that was missing. And then we got to Andrew Garfield, and it was like, okay, now he's wisecracking, but he looks too cool. He looks like this guy's a little too good looking to be Peter Parker, or he's got to be a little nerdier. And I kind of feel like with Tom Holland, they've nailed it more. It's like, okay, this is a good, they've got the balance here. This guy feels like
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man to me. And
Yeah.
the suit stuff is just, it's a little too Iron Man. I don't know. I wish he didn't have an AI that he could talk to in his suit. That I mean, it's
Yeah.
amusing. I mean, they got some funny jokes out of it, but it's like it that's not really Spider-Man. So, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, just like as I said before, I was kind of hoping that the Marvel deal would end because if Sony didn't have the rights to Tony Stark or those characters, it would be kind of forced to take it back to, you know, it would still be Tom Holland, but now he wouldn't have that like high tech suit he could talk to or things like that anymore. So I would have preferred that.
Mm-hmm. Bringing it back to what you said about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, yeah, was geeky enough because the problem with Andrew Garfield was to me he always looked too old to be in high school. If you go back and watch those movies, it's like, oh yeah, a 25-year-old trying to play a 16-year-old. How's that
Yeah,
going to work out? And then you have Tom Holland, where it's like clearly he's in his early 20s, but he still looks young enough. He can still pass off as a high schooler if you just like drop him in randomly.
yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the first post-credit scene with J.K. Simmons coming back as J. Jonah Jameson?
Oh, I really enjoyed that. It was spoiled for me by one of my viewers,
Uh,
who isn't. Well, I should give the backstory. Uh, I get along with most people. I get along with 90% of people. This was a complete and total jerk that I used to work with, and he's one of those guys you can't get rid of, no matter how hard you try.
mhm.
He just doesn't go away. And the morning that the movie opened, like 9 a.m. in the morning, I had tickets for that night. I was going in the evening, and at 9 a.m. he wrote in my on the comments on one of my videos, I just saw Spider-Man. I was so shocked to see J.K. Simmons back and I'm like, you piece of crap. Why would you write that at 9 a.m.? You know people didn't have a chance to see this yet. So it was ruined for me, but then I deleted it as quick as I could because it was in the comments on one of my videos on YouTube. And I'm like, well, any of my viewers who look at the comments are going to see this and they're going to get it spoiled for them too. So I
Wait, is that why in your Crazy After Darks everybody always says spoiler alert? J.K. Simmons is in Spider-Man Far From Home.
oh yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah, because I see that all the time when I go in there. Spoiler alert, J.K. Simmons, kind of thing. The one
Yeah.
post-credit scene I really did not like, and I don't mean to jump the gun here, is the one where Maria Hill and Nick Fury are revealed to be Skrulls the entire time. That to me just made absolutely no sense because it's like, wait a minute, were they Skrulls the entire time, even going back to the Avengers? Because Captain Marvel took place in '95, so have they been hiding off the whole time? Like, what's the deal with this?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just this movie. I think it's just this movie. I think it's basically just since Endgame because Captain Marvel and Nick Fury were seen at Tony Stark's funeral in Endgame.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure that was Nick Fury that went to the funeral. But I think just like after that all, he left the planet to start building Sword or whatever in space. So yeah, I think it was just, and I liked that twist because Nick Fury was out of character the whole movie. There was just something off. He didn't quite feel like Nick Fury. So I thought that was kind of a cool, like, well, this is why it didn't feel like Nick Fury. It wasn't.
Mhm.
And that always got
Uh,
spoiled for me too. That almost
yeah.
gets spoiled for me too by my wife because my wife doesn't care about spoilers and she'll read ahead on things.
Mhm.
And she apparently read that Nick Fury and Maria Hill turned out to be Skrulls the whole movie. So I read the thing about J. Jonah Jameson and I was like, oh my God, that son of a bitch, John, you can believe he wrote that, blah, blah, blah. He spoiled something for the movie. He spoiled something. And she goes, what did he spoil? Skrulls? That there's Skrulls in it? And I go, there are Skrulls in it? And she completely, at that moment, realized that wasn't it. And she goes, well, I don't know. I didn't see it. I'm guessing. Is that it? Are there Skrulls in it or something? And I go, no, that's not it. So then we get to the end credits and they turn out to be Skrulls. She's like, yeah, I thought that's what he spoiled for you, so I had to backtrack it real fast when I realized that that's not what you had heard.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because you just said about Nick Fury not acting in character, and I remember that scene in the hotel room when he knocks out his friend, and it's like, you're a very tough man to get a hold of, Spider-Man, and people keep like knocking on the door, interrupting him, and it's like, if one more person knocks on that damn door, I swear. And it's like, man, I just want him to break out into like Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction right now. The whole like Ezekiel 2517 just pump somebody full of those tranquilizers.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Before we move on, I read somewhere that apparently the Skrulls were supposed to be in X-Men Dark Phoenix, and then they got cut because of the Disney Fox buyout. I personally haven't seen the movie. This is why I'm asking you this. What's the is the theory valid or not?
Oh,
Do you believe
it's
the
been
theory's valid?
confirmed. It's been confirmed by the filmmakers. That's not even a question. Yeah, they were going to be Skrulls in the movie, but they got scrapped. It's kind of generic aliens now. They're not Skrulls anymore. But I think that's a movie people love to beat up on the Fox X-Men movies, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a little unfair because they've been hit or miss. I mean, you had some that weren't that
Yeah.
good, but some of them, like Days of Future Past, I'd put Days of Future Past right up there among some of the best Marvel movies. Days of Future Past is incredible, and so is
Yes.
Logan. Logan
Mm-hmm.
is a terrific movie. So it's like, okay, yeah, maybe X-Men 3 isn't so hot. Wolverine, the first Wolverine movie, flat out was garbage.
Oh,
But those movies, if you count them up, there's more good ones than bad ones.
yeah. Yeah, the only one I say is terrible, and keep in mind, I haven't seen X-Men Dark Phoenix, is that X-Men Origins Wolverine. And unfortunately, that was the very first X-Men movie I ever saw. Because I rented
Yeah.
it from Redbox, and I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. And then I go back and I watch the original and I'm like, that's a good one. Because everybody forgets that, like, without those Fox X-Men movies, I don't think comic book movies would even be where they are today. Because yeah, they were around, back in the '70s with the Superman movies, and then Batman came
Right.
along and was a cultural zenith, and then X-Men came around. It's like, holy shit, look at what they can do. And X-Men 2 was always ranked as like one of the top 5 comic book movies of all time. So
Yeah.
why is it all of a sudden now you're like slamming it when, just like 5, 10 years ago you were singing the praises?
I always say the X-Men movies are a series that people forget that they like. I
Mm-hmm.
always say that because every time an X-Men movie is about to come out, people are like, "Oh, it's going to suck. These movies suck." And then the movie comes out, and more often than not, people are like, "Hey, that was pretty good."
Mm-hmm.
Even with Dark Phoenix, I know critics hated it. Critics trashed it, and it didn't do too well at the box office. But everybody I know who actually went out to see it walked away like, I thought that was going to be terrible. That really wasn't that bad. I heard that from almost everybody I know who actually went to see the movie. So I think that I don't know. That's my takeaway is that people forget they like those movies until they watch them.
Mm-hmm. Now, in defense of those people that slammed the Fox X-Men movies for years, you have to remember X-Men Origins Wolverine burned a lot of goodwill at the time with people. I don't
Well,
think X-Men 3 I don't think X-Men 3 really did as much because the takeaway from that was it was a mixed bag. Because the storyline was decent, but everything else sucked. Like the Dark Phoenix storyline just being thrown in there randomly. But then, the story where there's like a cure for the mutant virus, it's like, hey, that's actually quite interesting.
yeah, I think X-Men 3 was not well received. And if they had
Hmm.
bounced right back with another good one right after
Yeah.
that, I think they would have been fine. But it was like two misfires in a row. X-Men 3 was bad, Wolverine was worse. And they were two consecutive films. And then we didn't get anything for a couple of years. And the next thing we got was going to be a prequel with First Class.
Hmm.
And I think people just didn't have faith because, the Star Wars prequels weren't so hot. And I think there was kind of prequel burnout at that time where people are like, oh, prequels, that's what you do when you don't know what else to do, you do a prequel.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, oh, we got two X-Men movies and now they're doing the prequel. This is going to suck. And then First Class came out. And again, like I say, people forget they like the X-Men movies. First Class came out. Everybody liked it.
Hmm.
So there you go.
I'll be the first one to admit I was on that bandwagon where I thought First Class like, oh, I'm not gonna waste my time with this because the last two were bad. Then I saw it and I'm like, that was actually pretty good. I like James McAvoy as Professor X and even Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. The one person I never liked in those movies was Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, but that's just because I just don't like Jennifer Lawrence really to begin with.
See, I thought she was fine. I know a lot of people complained that they turned Mystique into one of the heroes, but I think that's a
Hmm.
case of star power winning out because when they cast her as
Yeah.
Mystique, she was a nobody, but then she went on to become a huge star. And it's like, oh, we got one of the biggest stars in
Yeah.
Hollywood right now. She's got to be one of our heroes now. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Hunger Games, for that one. Yeah. And then, everybody with Days of Future Past, I even remember that narrative. Oh, this movie's going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Days of Future Past come out. Holy shit, this was such a good X-Men movie. Blah, blah, blah. It fixed the problem with X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine.
yeah,
Yay!
yeah.
And then X-Men Apocalypse came out. And then I feel like those guys were finally just like, finally something we can jump on. Even though I didn't think Apocalypse was all that bad by comparison to the rest of the series.
Oh no, Apocalypse was I think fine. I think it was a fine movie. It wasn't as good as Days of Future Past. It wasn't as good as First
Hmm.
Class, but I had no issue. And I like Dark Phoenix too. I thought Dark Phoenix was pretty good. The only ones that I would say I absolutely hated, well, the only one I absolutely hate is Wolverine. That's it.
Hmm.
And X-Men 3 was, it was fairly weak. But yeah, those are the only two I would say I have a problem with.
Yeah. No, one thing I just thought of that's really funny. This is why you always tune in for a guest spot because we start off with an MCU ranking. We talk about Fox X-Men movies and DC and Superman. So, you ready to get to number 17?
I'm ready.
All right. Number 17 is Doctor Strange. I rank this at number 8. You rank this at number 22.
Yeah, this is in my bottom 3. And to be fair to the movie, I think it has less to do with Doctor Strange, the movie, and more to do with I just don't have a good feel for the character. He's never been one of my
Mhm.
favorite characters. He's never a character I've ever picked up. I've never had a desire to pick up a comic and read a Doctor Strange comic. He's not like my good friend Rick, down to movie Rick.
Yeah.
I was asking him, I was shocked he never saw Superman the movie, Christopher Reeve, Superman the movie. And he says, well, I just don't like Superman. I don't like the character. Okay. And I guess that's what it comes down to. It's not like I hate Doctor Strange. I just never cared about Doctor Strange. So then I saw the movie, and I mean, it's a Doctor Strange movie. There's no two ways about it. It's a Doctor Strange movie. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't my thing exactly. Though I did like Doctor Strange a lot better in Infinity War. I thought him and Tony
Okay.
bouncing off each other, their dynamic together was terrific. So I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know. I'm excited for the second one, especially because Sam Raimi's doing it. I'm excited that Sam Raimi's doing the second one. But
Really?
yeah, no,
He replaced Scott Derrickson?
yeah.
Okay. Because originally I was originally terrified of Multiverse of Madness because Scott Derrickson was fired over creative differences, and what that told me is that Disney was too scared to go down the horror route. But now they brought in Sam Raimi. Okay, I could see that, same guy who did Evil Dead.
The only thing that worries me about that is, and let's go back to Spider-Man 3 for a second. I always hear people say, well, Spider-Man 3 was the studio's fault. The studio ruined Spider-Man 3. I'm going to hit you up with my controversial opinion. No, the studio's not responsible for Spider-Man 3. Sam Raimi is responsible for Spider-Man 3. The worst things in Spider-Man 3 can only be blamed on Sam Raimi, not the studio. Because what we know is the studio insisted he use Venom. Okay? And
Hmm.
Venom is a character he admittedly didn't care for. All right. Well, now you look at Spider-Man 3, you say, okay, well, the studio ruined it. They made him use Venom. All right. What is the worst things in Spider-Man 3? It's not Venom. The worst things in Spider-Man 3 are Peter dancing in a jazz club.
Hmm.
It's the I like to call him exposition butler who's been there the whole time but decided not until the very last minute to go, Spider-Man didn't kill your father, Harry. Your father died by his own hand. I cleaned his wounds. And it's like, so you could have said this at any time and you waited to the
Uh-huh.
worst things, amnesia Green Goblin. Oh, I bumped my head and I forget now that I hate Spider-Man. You know,
Uh,
the worst things in the movie weren't Venom. But what did the studio insist on? They insisted on Venom. So
mhm.
you can't tell me that was studio interference. Sam Raimi, who's a genius and I love him. I love the Evil Dead movies and he made my favorite Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 2. That was Sam Raimi's decisions that screwed that movie up. I'm sorry. So Sam Raimi gave us 2 terrific Spider-Man movies, and then he crapped the bed on one, and I put the blame on him, not on Sony. So that's
Yeah.
the only thing that worries me. But yeah, no, I'm excited about him doing Doctor Strange too.
So do I need to ask you about Eric Foreman being cast as Venom or not?
I didn't have a problem with that. Obviously, he didn't. It doesn't look like the comic book version, but I was okay with that because I kind of liked the idea of like Venom being a mirror image of Spider-Man, and Topher
Hmm.
Grace had the same kind of look as Tobey Maguire. Like he looked like he could have played Peter Parker, frankly, and I would have bought it. So like I liked, but people are always, oh no, Eddie Brock is like big and muscular and built, and it's like okay, but I could also see the Bizarro version where it's like, oh no, we're gonna do
Hmm.
like he's Peter's mirror. I think that's just as valid. So I didn't really have a problem with that.
Hmm. Okay, because I always felt that Topher Grace was woefully miscast as Eddie Brock. And that's more just due to his demeanor, because he also doesn't have a powerful enough voice. He always comes across as very mousy. Like, I see him and automatically I think Eric Foreman. Where it's like, okay, Donna. Okay, Donna.
Yeah, but Tobey Maguire's like that too, though. Don't you think? Like, I think that's like kind of I could see that being a good like balance for Tobey Maguire because I kind of see them as being very similar. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I always found that like that was always Spider-Man was that by day he was like the nerdy type, the guy that was always being bullied, and then by night he's Spider-Man in the very heroic gesture. So at least under the suit it's more believable, but like Eddie Brock, it's like not with how much they showed his face versus Venom. If they had showed a lot more Venom and less Eddie Brock, I think it would have worked.
Yeah. Well, it is not a fine film.
Yeah.
Not a fine film.
So yeah. So yeah, anyway, back to Doctor Strange. My biggest issue with this movie is all the humor that's thrown in it because it's thrown in at the worst possible timing. Like I said, the one scene I think of is the one where Doctor Strange is fighting Mads Mikkelsen's character. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And it's the one where like he's extending the hallway and Doctor Strange gets him on the ground, ground and pounding after the third punch, stops midway, and then goes, tells a punchline, and then finishes the fight, completely killing all the tension that was built up. Just like that.
See, and here's the funny thing. I don't really remember that because I've only seen the movie once. It's one I saw that I saw Doctor Strange in the theater and never revisited it.
Mm.
So I don't remember. I'm gonna have to rewatch it again.
Okay, because I was gonna say without all that, like I don't mind the humor in the Marvel movies, but if it hadn't been in all the worst places, for me personally, this would have probably been my either number three or number four. Because I'm the opposite of you. I actually really dug Doctor Strange when I read him because he was always kind of like the weird type and always going into more of the cosmic and the horror realm. Like and another part I really didn't like was the, Dormammu, I have a message for you. And Dormammu keeps killing him and then he keeps coming back. It's a vaudeville gag, Family Guy gag that just goes on for too long.
Hey, see that I remember kind of enjoying. I don't know. I'm gonna have to see it again. I don't,
Okay.
but yeah. Another thing. Another thing is I always kind of saw Doctor Strange as the poor man's Doctor Fate. Like I
All right,
was
you're gonna have to expand on that. I don't know who Dr. Fate is.
Doctor Fate is a DC Comics character who is a sorcerer, and he's just like Doctor Strange basically, except he dates back to the 1940s. So
Okay.
he was around a lot longer. So I always kind of saw Doctor Strange as being kind of maybe a little bit of a ripoff of Doctor Fate.
Okay,
It,
so
it,
like a Superman Captain Marvel kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. In fact, in the 90s, I don't know if you remember this, but in the 90s they had Amalgam Comics. Do you remember Amalgam Comics where the Marvel and DC characters got merged into one?
Oh yeah. I wasn't
Uh,
alive during that time, but I remember that because both Marvel and DC were going through financial woes, and so let's
right.
combine Spider-Man and Batman is the one I remember.
Yeah. Well, no, I think Batman was Wolverine. They combined Batman and Wolverine. It was called like the Dark Claw or something.
Okay.
Uh, it was right when they did Marvel versus DC. They did a mini series called Marvel DC versus DC, and as a spin-off of it, the characters got mixed together. Yeah, here it is. This is I don't know if you could see my phone here. Can you see that?
Uh,
That's Dark
yeah.
Claw. He was Batman combined with Wolverine,
Okay.
and Doctor Fate got merged with Doctor Strange, and they became Doctor Strange Fate. So I always remember that Doctor Strange Fate. Let's see.
All right. Joe, can you give me a quick second? I just need to get up and get my bottle of water.
Yeah, sure.
All right. All right. Sorry, it's in a spot where it's out of arm's reach.
Oh, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah, so they did Doctor Strange Fate, and it was basically Doctor Fate, but he was wearing Doctor Strange's cape.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, it's not a bad movie. I think my ranking of Doctor Strange is more just based on my indifference to the character than it actually not being, I think that's more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got nothing more to say on Doctor Strange because it's kind of just a basic movie when you actually break it down. It's a good
Yeah.
it's a good introduction for the character and a tease for things later on, but it's Doctor Strange is either a character you either love or you don't kind of thing, like what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's Doctor Strange, and
Mm-hmm.
he is a little strange. So it's like, you're either into it or you're not. So I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It's fine though.
Yeah. All right. So our next ranking on the list is the second of only two movies that we actually agreed on, and number 16 is Captain Marvel. We both ranked this at number 13 because that's just how the math works.
Yeah, no, I liked Captain Marvel. I remember I saw
Mhm.
Captain Marvel. I was laid off last year. Last March, I was laid off. And so oddly enough, last March and this March, I spent all my time at home in the house. What do you know? Uh, uh,
What if? Yeah, yeah. I was
but no,
about to say like one of them was a unfortunate circumstance, and the other one is just like, oh crap, not another pandemic. Here we go.
well, I went and saw Captain Marvel 4 times. In part because I didn't have anything else to do. I was laid off. And in part because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And we should point out that Captain Marvel was one of 2 Captain Marvel movies that came out last year because a month later
Yes.
Shazam came out, and Shazam was traditionally also known as Captain Marvel. I liked Shazam better of the two, but I enjoyed the crap out of Captain Marvel. I thought it had that great buddy cop feel with
Mhm.
Carol and Nick Fury together. I'm a sucker. I I'll admit it, it's easy. It is so easy, but you can play me like a fiddle. You give me the nostalgia, you've
Mhm.
got me. You've got me. The Wonder Woman 84 trailer did it too. You show me Wonder Woman fighting villains in a mall in the 80s, and they're playing 80s music. The New Order, sold. You've got me, because I grew up in the 80s. I remember that. I love that. You've hit my nostalgia bone. So all the
Uh-huh.
90s music and all the 90s references and having Captain Marvel crash land in a blockbuster, yes,
Yes.
maybe you're tugging at my nostalgia heartstrings, and maybe it's an easy thing, but damn it, you did it and it worked and I enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
and I loved the scrolls, and the scrolls. I'll tell you, a lot of people get upset when they deviate from the comics. A lot of people, if there's a
Mhm.
deviation, they'll be like, "Oh, I don't like that. That's not the way it is." But sometimes I really enjoy that because I think I know where a story's going. If I know the characters, if I know the comics, I think I know where a story's going. And if you decide to deviate, you've now given me a surprise that I didn't see coming. So the twist of making the scrolls the good guys, I
Mhm.
wasn't expecting that. It was a fun surprise. And also, uh, Ben Mendelsohn, he always plays the bad guy. He always plays the bad guy. So when we find out in this one, no, this time around, he's not the bad guy. We fooled you. He's actually the good guy. I enjoyed the crap out of that.
So I'm gonna ask this question. So I assume you know the origins of like the Skrull Kree War in the Marvel comics.
Yes.
Then okay,
Yes.
yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, would you explain it?
Oh, geez. You're asking me to really dig into old memories here because it's been a long time. Uh, I don't remember how it started, but I know that
Hmm.
the scrolls and the Kree traditionally do not like each other.
Hmm.
Is that oversimplifying it, or do we need to go
Um,
deep?
I'm the same way. I don't remember how it started. All I remember is like neither side was really the good guy side because both of them were just as bad. And so
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Earth would do was that they would keep the two focused on each other. That way they didn't come down to Earth and just wipe out all of mankind. Just, hey, let's get these two to wipe each other out kind of thing.
Right.
So that's why, in the comics, like Captain Marvel didn't really side with the Skrull or the Kree. He or she would always side with Earth because, yes, Captain Marvel wasn't always a female. And I'll say this with Captain Marvel, I don't dislike Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. But I really don't like Brie Larson in the role.
See, I'm a huge Brie Larson fan, so I'm always
Okay.
I'm always happy when Brie Larson's doing anything. I got introduced to Brie Larson when she was on Community, which is my favorite sitcom of all time, and she played Abed's girlfriend on Community. But yeah, no, I liked her. And there have been several Captain Marvels too. Aside from DC having Shazam being a Captain Marvel, she was originally Miss Marvel in the comics.
Yeah.
And her best friend's daughter in the movie, Monica, eventually became a Captain Marvel too. So yeah, there's a ton of Captain Marvels in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. So pretty much is, I only really have two main complaints with the movie, and that the first one is really the final fight between Captain Marvel and Jan-Rog. That was Jude Law's character. I felt it was just kind of over really quickly. Like Jan-Rog being her mentor, he should have known her fighting style like in and out, kind of like Anakin versus Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. If they had been training for years upon years, you're gonna know each other's strengths and weaknesses, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it's just bam. I don't have to prove myself to you.
But I think the difference, though, is that she never unleashed on him before. She was always, she was never at full power before.
Yeah, because he was always trying to tell her to, calm down and don't get too overpowered. Because
Exactly.
you're going to go into a rage and what happens, happens. And if we're talking Captain Marvel, I got to bring this up. And I refuse to call this movie feminist propaganda. And for one reason and one reason only, I feel that all of that stuff was added in the editing because that was perpetuated by the trailer, and that obviously enraged some people at the time, and rightfully so, because they did the same stuff with the 2016 Ghostbusters, where if you don't support this, you're a sexist, misogynist, whatever ist you want to throw out there.
The funny thing is, there are some trolls on YouTube. I never want to say their names because they're the worst of the worst. But they kept calling this movie feminist. Oh, it was feminist propaganda. It's only
Yeah.
feminist in that the hero happened to be a woman. There's no like feminist messages in this movie. Again, I'm going to pick on my favorite target here. If you want to see a superhero property that is quite literally shoving politics down your throat, go turn on Supergirl on the CW. I'm always going to beat up on Supergirl. I hate the show. But the average episode of Supergirl is jamming 20 pounds of politics down your throat at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, it's not there in Captain Marvel. It's just not there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Anyone calling Captain Marvel feminist propaganda is not being intellectually honest. Because for those of us that have seen the movie, a little bit is there, but it's not so overbearing where it's, shoving down your throat the entire movie.
I think it all comes down to what Brie Larson was attributed a quote that she didn't say, a quote she never said. But what Brie Larson did say was she gave an interview before the movie where she said she wanted a more inclusive press corps.
Yeah.
She wanted more women there because she didn't think that 40-year-old men were necessarily going to be the target audience. And she said she doesn't need to hear what 40-year-old men think about 40-year-old white men think because they're not necessarily the target audience. And that turned into Brie Larson said she doesn't want white men to see her movie. It's
Mm-hmm.
not what she said. That is not what she
Yeah.
said. But that's what it got turned into. So I think the whole feminist slant came from this misattributing what she said. It's not what's in the movie, but it's this imaginary slight that didn't actually happen, but that if it did happen at all, it happened outside of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that quote. Wasn't she at like an award show when she just gets up on stage and says, I don't care what a 40-year-old white dude thinks about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him.
Yeah, and you know what? That's accurate. I'm a 40-year-old white guy, and I didn't want to see A Wrinkle in Time. I saw the trailer, and I'm like, yeah, that's not a movie for
Yeah,
me.
but people assume that is just, like the absolute like Hollywood arrogance type of thing, because like, oh, here we go, another celebrity here to lecture us Americans kind of thing. Oh, duddy.
I
But
don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the feminist propaganda has to do with really the marketing of the movie, because if they didn't push that as hard as they did, you would still have a pretty decent movie at the end of it. It's almost like Marvel Studios didn't even need to do that first trailer. What makes her a hero? And you show the her and then add the O at the end. It's like, I know what you're doing. You're just trying to get all the rage bait, the rage clicks. And initially, I didn't want to see Captain Marvel as a result of that.
To this day, one of my one video that I put up that got the most downvotes, the most thumbs downs, and the most angry comments was one where I pointed out the day Captain Marvel opened, the very day it opened, I showed proof that people were review bombing the movie and that their reviews weren't legitimate because it had a really rotten score, an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And I showed the numbers and I said, this was Friday morning. Friday morning, the movie had only played to Thursday night preview audiences. That was it. Only Thursday night preview audiences had seen the movie. And I showed the number of downvotes and angry comments and negative reviews that this movie had on Friday, and compared it with the amount of votes Infinity War had the year before. And there were more votes on Captain Marvel than Infinity War had a full year prior. And I said, no, wait a minute. This is proof that these people didn't see this movie. Because you can't tell me more people saw Captain Marvel on Thursday night than saw Infinity War in a full year. And that's proof that these negative reviews are false. They're from trolls, and this isn't real. And people came out of the woodwork in my comments, trashing me for daring to say this. Oh, you're a social justice warrior, blah, blah, blah. You're not a real man if you can support this movie, blah, blah. And it was just like, and I later found out that weekend there was a group of people that were basically on YouTube sitting looking for any video that mentioned Captain Marvel or Brie Larson and just doing that.
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me get my thoughts together for a second. Okay. Yeah, because what I was going to say is, referring to the trolling, I feel that it's fair to also mention this is, do you remember Rotten Tomatoes used to have a want to see score?
Yes.
It was basically, do you want to see this movie, yes or no? And a lot of people were saying no. And so Rotten Tomatoes got rid of it entirely and the narrative at the time was, oh, they're doing that to protect Disney and Captain Marvel. So the review bombing on the Thursday night screenings, was that a result of, Rotten Tomatoes and Disney, working together to silence the critics? So I feel like there are some people like just dedicated to just, we're going to hate this movie no matter what. The same thing happened with Black Panther, if you remember that, back in 2018. But I feel that part of the blame needs to be put on, Marvel Studios and, Rotten Tomatoes for really feeding that group of people.
See, I think Rotten Tomatoes had to protect their reputation. If their whole sales pitch is you go to them to see what people think of a movie. If their statistics are not accurate or are provably inaccurate, then they lose their value. they're not a good they're not a good gauge of what people are saying or people are thinking if they're easily manipulated. I always thought the idea that Rotten Tomatoes was protecting Disney was ludicrous
Mm-hmm.
because so many Disney movies get bad review scores. Wrinkle in Time got bad review scores. John Carter of Mars got bad review scores. It's not like every Disney movie scores a 90. You know, it's like if that was the
Yeah.
case, if every movie from Disney was scoring a 90, then you have to say something is going on here. But I think it was more a case of Rotten Tomatoes saw that people were manipulating the score for their reasons, and it was getting out there that people were doing this. And I think it was a bad look for Rotten Tomatoes because you're taking away our legitimacy as a company. If people know
Mm-hmm.
that our scores are so easily manipulated, they're not going to take us seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, and something else that I just remembered. Remember back in like 2016 when Batman v Superman got destroyed by critics, and
Yeah.
everyone was saying, "Oh, Disney's paying off all the critics so they get the higher Rotten Tomato score, and they're just going to destroy DC because they're the competitor."
And
Yeah.
Kevin Feige came out at the time and said, "That's stupid. We want Warner Brothers and DC to succeed because too many people don't know the difference.
Hmm.
There's too many people out there who aren't comic book nerds who just see a superhero movie and they don't know the difference between Marvel and DC. And a bad superhero movie looks bad for the superhero movie genre as a whole. So,
Hmm.
so it's like the more of these movies that are good, the more people are going to keep going to see them. So it's like it's not good for Marvel if DC fails. It's like you want the superhero movie train to keep rolling, and for
Hmm.
that to happen, as many as possible of these movies have to be good.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. How many people think that like Batman and Spider-Man are, in the same like universe kind of thing where
Well,
no one really knows the difference between Marvel and DC. Or I know I'm gonna date this again, but even look at like Bloodshot with Vin Diesel that just came out. Who the hell is Bloodshot kind of thing? What's Vertigo? Was it no, not Vertigo? What is it? Is it Valiant that did
Acclaim,
Bloodshot?
Valiant, yeah, Valiant, Acclaim.
Okay,
I think they went by. I think they went by two names. I think it was
yeah.
Valiant Comics. Then they changed their name to Acclaim. I don't know if they went back
Hmm.
to I don't know.
Yeah, because I was saying Vertigo, but it's like no, because wasn't that like an experimental arm of DC? Because that's where like John Constantine came from. John,
Vertigo was DC's mature readers
yeah,
imprint.
okay.
If anything was gonna have nudity and f bombs, it was gonna carry the Vertigo logo on
Yeah,
it.
because the two most famous from that I remember are Constantine and Preacher for
Yeah,
obvious reasons.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
But
but that it.
to just to show you how people get easily confused, I remember when Justice League, the movie Justice League came out, the post credit scene had Lex Luthor sitting on his yacht, and Deathstroke, the character Deathstroke, shows up,
Mhm.
and there were people in the audience in the theater going, "It's Deadpool! It's Deadpool!"
Wow.
And in these people's minds, it was completely plausible that Deadpool could show up because they're like, "Oh, it's a superhero movie. Why couldn't Deadpool show up?" You know, like the Marvel DC barrier is not in the minds of the average. You look at my daughter playing with her toys, and she's like, "Daddy, Supergirl just put Doctor Octopus in jail," and you're sitting there like, "Well, that would never happen. Supergirl would
Hmm.
never fight Doctor Octopus, but she doesn't know that, and
Yeah.
my mom wouldn't know that." You know, so.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Like, how many people know the difference between Marvel, DC, and then you've got all the indie publishers. Like we said, Valiant, IDW is another one because they have like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Crow.
But here's a question for you.
Okay.
The Bloodshot movie was put out by Sony.
Yeah.
Sony put out the Bloodshot movie, and Sony has the rights to Spider-Man. So even though Spider-Man is a Marvel character and Bloodshot is a Valiant character, could they have Spider-Man and Bloodshot team up since they hold the film rights to both? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. But
Uh-huh.
they do hold the film rights to both. So I would argue that's not out of the question. And there was a period of time, obviously, Disney just bought Fox. Fox is now owned
Hmm.
by Disney. But a couple of years ago, there was a rumor going around that Warner Brothers was trying to buy Fox. Now,
Hmm.
could you imagine if Warner Brothers bought Fox and suddenly Wolverine was in the Justice League movie because now Warner Brothers held the X-Men film rights? It sounds crazy, but if Warner Brothers bought Fox, that wouldn't have necessarily been out of the question.
No, man, if Warner Brothers bought Fox, it would be We Want Wolverine versus Batman.
Oh, heads would have exploded if they made Justice League versus X-Men. If that movie
Uh-huh.
came out, and I'll tell you something, I
Did it?
would have been first in line to see it. So
Uh, yeah, didn't Marvel Comics do that with the X-Men movies where it was like Star Trek The Next Generation versus X-Men?
yeah,
Like they did that comic because Patrick Stewart was in both?
they did. Well, first was a comic book. First was a
Mm.
comic book called X-Men meets Star Trek meets X-Men, and it was Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk met the X-Men. Then they did a novel called Star Trek: The Next Generation and X-Men, and this time Picard met them. And then I think I don't know, they did a few different crossovers.
Yeah. All right, so I think we've pretty much covered Captain Marvel in the Rotten Tomatoes situation.
Yes, and tangented quite a bit. So.
Yeah. So yeah, this is part of the fun of getting a special guest on. You know, we can just tangent the conversation just goes where it goes. Yeah, I've got notes, but it's like, whatever. As long as we follow this, like we're fine. All right, so I guess it's time for number 15. Number 15 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, I personally rank this at number 10. You rank this at 16.
I like it. Yeah, no, this is a fun movie. I think it's better than the first one.
Mhm.
I really, yeah, I don't know what more to say. I really enjoyed this one. I think it was better than the first one. That obviously the first one, as we said before, really mirrored Iron Man a lot in its plotting.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a more original story. I liked the whole quantum realm thing and how they brought back Janet Van
Yeah.
Dyne. And the villain was pretty interesting too.
Yeah, I like the villain. I like the villain in this movie quite a bit, Ghost, because this is like the one of the few times where like a villain is not fighting to like take over the world or get this new technology. She's literally just fighting to survive
Right.
because her spirit's being pulled between both the real world and the quantum realm.
Yeah. Yeah, and it
Mhm.
was the actress. I can't remember her name, but the actress is the star of a show on Sci-Fi Channel called Killjoys. And
Mhm.
I watched. I was a fan of Killjoys, so it was kind of cool seeing her in there. And
Mhm.
yeah, no, this was a fun one.
Yeah. I also like how this one showed the character relationship between was it Scott Lang as Ant-Man in these movies? Because I almost said Hank
Yes.
Pym, and it's like, no, it's not Hank Pym because Hank Pym's the guy that beat his wife. But yeah, Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, where you
Yeah.
finally get to see the two of them work together because they always teased it in the first movie, but you never actually saw it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's another thing is like I'm really hoping that Evangeline Lilly who plays Hope, she's been coming under fire lately for some controversial remarks she made, and I know there's some people who saying, "Oh, she should be removed from the Ant-Man
Hmm.
movies," and I really hope they don't remove her because she was so good in the part and she has such good chemistry with Paul Rudd. I think that the movie would suffer if she wasn't there. So I'm hoping that uh, I'm hoping that it just kind of smooths over and that
Yeah,
she's back in the third one.
yeah. No, who I hope is in the third Ant-Man movie is Matthew Fox, and Lost fans are going to pick up on that. And also some Family Guy fans, because Matthew Fox and Evangeline Lilly in the same scene, and you just go, oh,
Well, don't they have to
we
bring in
are.
don't they have to bring in Sawyer too then? Doesn't Sawyer have to show up?
Yeah, so that would get a little too complicated. But I was thinking of that old Family Guy gag where it's like, with Matthew Fox's heavy breathing, and it's, the whole Kate, we are the island. Oh God. He's breathing into like the paper bag.
I just hope that Rick Moranis shows up.
Yes. Yes. As what's that doctor's name again? I know you just said it,
Dr.
but
Wayne Szalinski.
yep, and he works with Hank Pym, and then there you go.
Yeah.
Now it's not just a Marvel universe. It's, hey, honey, I shrunk the kids.
That could be fun.
Yeah. So number 14 is going to probably be a bit of a shock to you. That's Captain America: First Avenger. I ranked this at number 6. You ranked it at 20.
It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good movie. My only problem with it is it doesn't have an ending. Because it can't. It can't have an ending. He has to get frozen. He has to fall on the ice and get frozen. It's the way it has to happen. And the downside of that is the movie doesn't have an ending. It just kind of stops.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of kills the movie for me. But I also recognize they couldn't have done it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the movie, and
Yeah,
I like the World War II setting. I think it's a pretty good movie.
yeah, because with that, it's how are you going to get Steve Rogers from 1940s all the way to 2011 without aging a day, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So that super soldier serum. It's like, well, that doesn't make him not invulnerable, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Where the guy doesn't age, like
Right.
Logan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, this one I actually really enjoyed watching, Steve Rogers grow as a character, because you just see him as just an average everyday guy in the beginning. Then he goes from normal person to obviously the super soldier with the serum, and then the character Captain America becomes so popular he becomes a propaganda tool. Then he actually becomes a superhero at the end.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's fairly well done. The special effects
mm-hmm,
of turning him so small and wimpy,
mm-hmm.
it was really well done.
Yeah, and that one I actually have to give Joe Johnston the credit for that because he used to work with George Lucas back in the day, so it wouldn't surprise me if he picked up on techniques to learn how to shoot around that.
Yeah, and Joe Johnston, he's an underrated director.
Yes.
I mean, he's really good. I mean, speaking of
Mm-hmm.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, he directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, yeah. He also did The Rocketeer with Timothy
Rocketeer.
Dalton.
Yep, and
Yeah, that movie gets unfairly shit on, but it's a good movie.
oh, yeah, I love that movie. That movie's
Mm-hmm.
terrific. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, what did you think of Hugo Weaving as Red Skull?
he was pretty good. He was pretty
Mm-hmm.
good, but as we later learned, he's not irreplaceable
Yeah.
because the guy who picked up the role in the last two Avengers movies, a lot of us weren't even sure. We were like, was that Hugo Weaving? They get him back?
I thought for sure they got Hugo Weaving back, but okay. Because I so badly wanted Red Skull to come in at some point, just go, Mr. Rogers. I also really loved the characters Peggy Carter and Howard Stark. Because at least
Yeah.
you get to see kind of the origins of Stark Industries from is it Tony Stark's grandfather was Howard?
No, his father.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how that would work because that's obviously set in the 40s, and then if that was Tony's father and Iron Man was in '08, that's a pretty big time jump there.
But he was already dead then. He was
Yeah,
already because then
yeah.
we saw him in the film footage
Mm-hmm.
from Iron Man 2, and I guess that was supposed to be shot in the 70s,
Yeah.
and he was now played by what's the actor's name? John Slattery, I want to say, who then played the part again in Avengers Endgame. So yeah, that was Tony's dad.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that because like he's talking to like Tony directly as like a post-mortem kind of thing. Because spoiler for Avengers Endgame, because Tony did the exact same thing at the very end of that one with the
Yeah.
recorded message. So yeah, I forgot all about that. 23 movies. Try to keep all those straight. Oh, so you ready for number 13?
I am.
All right, number 13, Iron Man 3. I ranked this at 14. You ranked it at 11.
Yeah, it's my favorite of the Iron Man movies. I really like this movie quite a bit. It
Mm-hmm.
again, we talked about it with, oh, what movie were we talking about? The Skrulls.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about how sometimes they'll deviate from the comics in order to take you by surprise. And we saw a real good example of that in this one, where we got the twist that the man we thought was the Mandarin wasn't the Mandarin. And I thought that
Yeah.
was brilliant. I remember sitting in the theater, and it was the same summer. I remember same summer, Iron Man 3 and Star Trek Into Darkness came out. And both movies had a twist. And I
Oh.
remember when Benedict Cumberbatch in Star Trek Into Darkness said, "My name is Khan." Nobody in the audience cared. Everybody was like, "Yeah, we know.
Uh-huh.
No, we figured that
Yeah.
out. We figured that out." But then you
Yeah.
think
I
Iron
was
Man,
that guy in the theaters. As soon as I heard that, I just sat back and I'm just like, done.
but then you get to Iron Man, and when we find out that Trevor was an actor, not the Mandarin, it
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh crap! I didn't see that coming.
Uh, See, that's actually the part I didn't like about Iron Man 3, because the entire movie is always building up to this big fight between Iron Man and the Mandarin, Iron Man and the Mandarin. And I was a comic reader, obviously, as I've brought up throughout this, and I really dug the Mandarin. And then it turns out that it's like, oh, he's just an actor putting on a character. And then the villain switches to some guy that Tony Stark screwed like 15 years ago. And it's like, okay, this came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think that scene where we found out he wasn't actually the Mandarin is probably my favorite scene in the movie, because I remember the first time I saw it just being so. Uh, they got me. They got me. I didn't see it coming. I was really surprised. Whereas that same summer, J.J. Abrams did not get me with the Khan reveal. So I was like,
Yeah.
this is a twist done right. That is a twist done terribly.
Yeah, I think with J.J. Abrams and the whole Star Trek Into Darkness, not meaning to deviate too far, but I think people's big fears with that one was that it was just going to be a remake of Wrath of Khan. And so, the marketing at the time was like, oh, no, 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 Benedict Cumberbatch is playing John Harrison. It's a completely new character. And then as soon as that scene came up with utter those four words, my name is Khan, how many people just threw their hands up and it's like, okay, yeah, that doesn't shock me.
What really got me in that movie, though, I know we're really going off track here, but what really got me in that movie was it managed to be its own movie, and it was carving out a nice story that was unique. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Khan, you had the character of Khan in the movie, but you weren't retelling the Wrath of Khan, and you weren't retelling Space Seed. You were doing a new story with Khan. I'm like, all right, whatever. This is fine. But then we got to the last 15 minutes, and we got Kirk's death scene.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it was a shot for shot remake of the
Yes.
scene in Wrath of Khan. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
you've gone 2 hours without rehashing something you did before. And just when you were in the clear, and I'm like, oh no, this is okay. Rehash City, here we go. And it's like, you had like 15 minutes left. You had 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes.
Yeah, and I guess the only difference is that Kirk was brought back to life using Khan's blood instead of being shot off to the Genesis planet that was
Right.
in search for Spock.
Which is so stupid, because if
Mm-hmm.
Khan's blood cures death, nobody can die now because you still got him. You still got him and
Yep.
all his people in cryostasis. So anytime someone dies, you can be like, hey, crack open that Khan stasis chamber, grab some blood. We need to bring this dude back.
Mm-hmm. And one last thing I want to say on Iron Man 3 regarding the Mandarin is the Mandarin was such a cool character. Like he was like the Tibetan monk that could, obviously access a bunch of magic. And then all of a sudden, ha ha ha, he's turned into funny joke. This is the first time that the MCU actually caved to the Chinese market in that regard. And I forgot to bring this up during Doctor Strange, but they did the same thing with the Great One, the Tilda Swinton's character. What was her character? Was she not the Great One, the Ancient One? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they were both like Tibetan monks, and obviously because China hates Tibet, it's like, oh, we gotta change these characters that way we can get into China.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So, yeah, as soon as I saw that, and some people thought it was a clever twist, but I automatically thought it's like, yeah, this is to get into just another market kind of thing. If they weren't forced to do it, would they have stuck with the Mandarin as the villain being this Tibetan monk and using all this magic?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. So that's a fun what if game actually. And one other thing I forgot about, and I've brought this up in a couple of your live streams before, is Iron Man 3 deals obviously with Tony Stark's humanity. I felt that should have been handled in Iron Man 2 and not Iron Man 3. Because by Iron Man 3, like, Tony Stark should have been completely figured out, and it was just, balls to the wall. So Iron Man 1's the origin story. Okay, he's coming up. And then, obviously, the second one, he's got the downturn. And then the third one, he goes back up again like Spider-Man did with the Sam Raimi trilogy.
I really liked the aspect of him having, like, post-traumatic stress from his experience in Avengers, though. I thought that was a pretty cool aspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, because I was about to say with the Iron Man trilogy, but like you brought up, it's like you can't really claim Iron Man's a trilogy because this is a cinematic universe, and we had Iron Man 2, and Avengers, so there was the third appearance. So actually, Iron Man 3 is his fourth appearance.
Yeah, and then we got him back the next year again in Avengers 2.
Yeah, Avengers 2, and then Civil War, and then Spider-Man. So yeah, speaking of Civil War, that's our number 12 is Captain America: Civil War. You ranked it at 6. I ranked it at 18.
I really like Civil War. I think the title's wrong, though.
Mm-hmm.
It should not be called Captain America: Civil War. It should be called Avengers: Civil War. They did not make a Captain America 3. They made an Avengers 3. That is an Avengers movie. I'm sorry. That's an Avengers movie.
All the fanboys are going to disagree with you because because Hulk's not in the movie, therefore it can't be Avengers.
Yeah, but I mean, Hulk was not in. For like a second, I was gonna say Hulk really wasn't in Infinity War either. Banner was, but
yeah, because the Hulk wasn't coming out,
and Hawkeye wasn't in Infinity War either.
So why couldn't he do Mission Impossible 6 again if he wasn't in Infinity War?
I don't know.
Yeah. So before we go off topic, the main thing I want to bring up with Civil War is that I want to bring up that it's an utter failure just based on the title alone. Because a movie that says Civil War in the title should accomplish two things: split the universe and split the fan base with Team Iron Man and Team Captain America, and it accomplished neither, in my opinion.
Well, that was the one thing in the comic book, Civil War, the comic book. When it came out, I remember Marvel was billing it as neither of these guys are necessarily right. Neither of these guys are necessarily wrong. It's up for the reader to decide. But when you call the movie Captain America: Civil War, and Chris Evans gets top billing, he's the main character in this movie. Oh, and Robert Downey Jr. is now the co-star. Well, you've chosen sides.
Yeah.
That's no longer for the viewer to decide. You've chosen sides. No, Captain America, he's the hero of this film. His name's in the title. So yeah, I that's another reason why I don't think the movie should have been called Captain America: Civil War. It should have been called Avengers: Civil War. Because as soon as you make Captain America the protagonist, you're telling us who's right, who we should be rooting for.
And yeah, so obviously the fight initially starts out with the whole Sokovia Accords, and it's like Tony Stark was like pro-government intervention on the Avengers, and Steve Rogers was completely against it, and that's why they initially fought at the airport. And then where did they go after that? Was that former Soviet Union, where it was revealed that like Bucky Barnes had killed Tony Stark's parents?
I think so.
Yeah, and then the fight like stopped being about pro-government and less government regulation and about you killed my parents and how dare you defend this guy even though he was your friend and was brainwashed at the time.
Right.
I
Right.
saw that just as a cheap tactic to get the two characters back fighting together.
Yeah, I mean, it did effectively break the team to the point that when Infinity War happens, there's no more Avengers. The Avengers have chosen their sides. Some of them are gone, some of them are in hiding. But it it definitely didn't balance it. It definitely didn't make
Mm-hmm.
it like and they did make Tony Stark look very, he was very much the bad guy of the movie. Tony Stark was the bad guy.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. You can't walk away and
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, well, Tony was right," because the movie consistently told you Tony wasn't right. I'll tell you who did come off better in that movie was Rhodey, because at the end
Mm-hmm.
when Rhodey's in rehab and he's telling Tony like why he backed him, Tony sounded much more, or Rhodey sounded much more reasonable than Tony did. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, he put up a much more credible argument.
Yeah. And my thing with Civil War is that all the movies after this really didn't reference the events until Avengers Infinity War. So Doctor Strange, there was no mention of it because obviously we had to focus more on Doctor Strange. But the one that I thought would actually mention it even more was Spider-Man Homecoming because they showed the Peter's vlogs and the fact that Tony Stark is coming in and being his mentor. But outside of those vlogs, there's almost no mention of any events.
The one thing I really enjoy in Spider-Man Homecoming is when the gym coach puts on the tape of Captain America giving them some public service announcement, and he says, technically this guy's a war criminal, but I'm still supposed to show you this. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, but if I can talk today, but I think you get what I'm saying. Where it's like this is supposed to be a big
Right.
universe-changing effect, and it just not even a ripple in regards to the movies.
Yeah, no, I could see that.
Hmm. Yeah, and then by Infinity War, obviously the two sides get back together, and hey, best friends again. 2 years after they supposedly fought and broke up.
But now, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember. Tony and uh, Steve Rogers, they don't have any scenes together in Infinity War, do they? Like, it's not until Endgame after they've gotten there, because Tony immediately went off into space.
Yeah,
And that, so
yeah, because
it,
Spider-Man followed him. Yeah.
right. So it's not until Endgame that those two characters get reunited again.
Yeah. Okay.
And even then, it's not a happy reunion.
Yeah.
Tony's, you know,
Hmm. I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about that. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that when we get to Infinity War, obviously.
yeah.
So, without further delay, our number 11 is the Incredible Hulk. You rank this at 19. I rank this as my fifth best. So,
Yeah, no, it's a pretty good movie. I do think it's one of the lesser ones in that it seems pretty inconsequential. It never got a follow up. We don't know what happened to the leader. We don't know what happened to Abomination. They're still out
mhm.
there somewhere. I didn't think we would ever see any kind of follow up to the Incredible Hulk, but then suddenly John Hurt showed up in Civil War, reprising his role as
As General Ross.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
uh, like I said early on, this was the movie that gave us our first ever superhero crossover, because Iron Man
Mhm.
introduced to the universe, but it wasn't until Tony Stark showed up at the end of this movie that we ever officially had a crossover, and that was the first one. It was like, yay, two superhero movies actually crossed over. This is historic.
Mhm. And to think that could have been Batman Begins and Superman Returns, but we already went into that.
My friend Bob thinks it should have been Superman 3. Superman 3 back in 1983 came out at a time when Linda Carter's Wonder Woman TV series had just recently left the airwaves. And my friend Bob always said, why not? Why didn't they back then, when they had Linda Carter, who was just coming off Wonder Woman, was a big TV hit? Why didn't Wonder Woman show up in Superman 3? Do Superman 3 as Superman meets Wonder Woman. Get Christopher Reeve and Linda Carter together. I'm like, you know what? That's brilliant. I would have loved that. They didn't do it, but that would have been awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, getting back to the Incredible Hulk, you can't really say that this is really an origin story. Because the origin story is handled all throughout the opening credits, and then it immediately cuts to Bruce Banner in Panama, 30 days since the last incident.
Right.
And that's what I really liked about it, is it didn't just retell, how he got exposed to the gamma radiation, and this is how he's trying, and it's more about, how is he trying to control the beast.
What's interesting about Incredible Hulk is the screenplay was written to be a sequel to the Hulk from 2003 with the Ang Lee Hulk with Bruce Banner. It was
You mean
Eric Bana, yeah. Who was it? Zach Penn, I believe it was Zach Penn wrote the script.
Yeah.
Zach Penn wrote both movies, and when he wrote The Incredible Hulk, he thought he was writing Hulk 2. In fact, I think originally he was writing Hulk 2. Then somewhere after the fact, it got turned into a reboot. So if we look, the 2003 Hulk film leaves Banner in South America, and this movie opens up with Banner in South America because it was supposed to be a continuation. But then through a couple of rewrites, they were like, no, you know what? We're just rebooting it. We're rebooting it. So the script remained mostly the same. It got tweaked a little, and now we got the origin in the opening credits, but they changed the origin so it no longer matched what we saw in the 03 movie, and instead was closer to what we saw on the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno TV show.
Yeah, that's what I always liked about the Incredible Hulk. I did not like the 2003 Hulk movie personally.
It's got its moments. There's things I like about it. What really kills that movie is it really gets into this weird thing about his relationship with his father. I don't know. The thing I like most about it, and I heard people criticize this, but I thought it was cool. Ang Lee kept using split screens to simulate comic book panels. And I heard people saying that was cheesy. I thought it was visually really cool. The movie's not good, but I'm like, you know what? I like that effect. I think that's a pretty cool thing you did there. I dig that. But overall, it is a movie that, I don't know, it takes itself way too seriously and goes into some like really deep places about like fathers and sons and their relation. I don't know. It's a movie. It's like nobody told Ang Lee, you're making a superhero movie here. That's what you're making. You're getting a little too artsy here. You're going a little too deep.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, that effect hadn't been done back in 03 with the comic book panels. Because I immediately got to thinking of Sin City, the sequel, A Dame to Kill For.
Yeah.
And they did that in a couple of areas, and that wasn't until 14 when that one released.
Something like
13
that.
or 14.
Yeah, that's about right, because the first one was, I think, 06, 05 or 06. And the sequel didn't come out for at least 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah, because that one they had to recast Michael Clark Duncan, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I think The Incredible Hulk has, everything that's needed to be said is that, and one thing I like is, and I'll go back to it, that it feels like a smaller movie because it's more focused on Bruce Banner and not really the Hulk. If you look at the movie. Because, the Hulk, it's always, about, how long has it been between, each incident when the monster has come out.
Right.
So, yeah, very, very, what was the opening to the original series? The whole, like, he's trying to, like, control the monster inside of him.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Another thing that we didn't even mention is Ed Norton. Edward Norton
Yes.
plays Banner, and it was his one and only appearance in the role because
Hmm.
there were some
Uh,
difficulties on the set where he and the director were not, I guess, seeing eye to eye. And Marvel deemed him to be too difficult to work with, and they did not invite him back for Avengers.
yeah.
I think I like Ruffalo better. I think Ruffalo was a better Hulk, but I don't think Norton was bad. And I got to admit, I wish I could slip into the alternate dimension where Norton had gone on to play the role in the Avengers movies just to see what it would have
Yeah.
looked like.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for that too, because obviously on the Avengers poster they don't show Bruce Banner, they just show Hulk. So it's like, oh, okay, whatever. And then Mark Ruffalo comes on screen. It's like, what? Because I really dug Ed Norton's portrayal of Bruce Banner. If I had to rank all three of them, that's was it Eric Bana was 03, then obviously Edward Norton, and then Mark Ruffalo took it over. Ed Norton is number one for me. Mark Ruffalo's is a second, and Eric Bana's dead last.
Yeah,
I can't rank the television show because I haven't watched it.
I think I'd put Ruffalo first, but Ed Norton,
Okay.
I thought he was good. I thought he was really good.
Okay. Yeah, so, let's go right now into our number 10. That's Captain America Winter Soldier. You ranked this at number 5. I ranked it at 17.
This is my favorite of the quote unquote solo movies, meaning not the team ups, just the solo characters. Now, yeah, I guess technically you could say, well, it is a team up because Natasha's in it, but it's not the whole Avengers altogether.
Yeah.
It is my favorite. I like the feel of we're going to do a Marvel Comics version of a political thriller, and I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, see, yeah, when you mention political thriller, that's my main problem with the movie because I actually felt it wasn't much of a political thriller because I saw it where, Captain America obviously came from World War II and fought Hydra, where Hydra wanted to be this massive organization that wanted to rule the world. But now Shield has become that very presence where they have presences all over the world. So why did Hydra even need to be there? And also, why would Captain America just blindly support Shield even though he fought against that very thing in the first movie back during World War II? Because I always thought it would be a lot more interesting to have Captain America fight Shield since Shield became what Hydra wanted to become. So why was Hydra even in the movie if Shield already existed and brought Hydra's plans to fruition?
I don't know. You put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, sorry, but when someone told me it was a political thriller, that's the way I analyzed it. And it's like, wait a minute, if this was a genuine political thriller, it should have gone more in this direction and not the way that they went with it. I always saw it as just it was the safe political thriller because Shield good guys, Hydra bad guys.
Well, I think that's fair, but it is the Marvel universe, so
Yeah.
I don't think they're gonna want to go too dark with it. But
Hmm.
no, I really enjoyed this one. It, it's probably the one I go back to the most in rewatches.
Okay. But I will say I do like Bucky Barnes as Winter Soldier in this one because at least now Captain America has a worthy adversary
Yes,
in that
yes,
in that sense.
and the introduction of Falcon, I really liked.
Yes. Anthony
Anthony
Mackie.
Mackie. Anthony Mackie. I thought he was really good on that in that movie.
Hmm.
We didn't even mention him as in Ant-Man. He was great. His scene in Ant-Man was terrific.
Yeah. Hi. So, is there anything else you want to add to Winter Soldier? Because I actually forgot that Zemo was even in that movie.
Um, you know what? We should point out that it's the first one that was directed by the Russo brothers, the first Marvel movie.
Yes.
And the Russo brothers, little did we know at the time, they would go on to be probably some of the most important people behind the scenes in the
Mhm.
MCU because of They followed it up with Civil War, and then they did the last two Avengers movies.
Mm-hmm.
But the Russo brothers, I mentioned earlier on, I'm a huge fan of the TV show Community. I love Community. And the Russo brothers had worked on Community. They were producers on the show, and they directed a lot of the early episodes. And this is the first one where we start to see the Community guest shots. Danny Pudi, who plays Abed on Community, has a guest shot as a SHIELD agent in this. Then they continued it up in Civil War, where the Dean, Jim Rash, who played Dean Pelton on Community, he shows up. That became a theme running through all their Marvel movies. Is one of the Community cast members would show up. They missed Infinity War. There's no Community cast member in Infinity War, but then they make up for it in Endgame by sticking two of them in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I'm actually different. I actually never got into Community, so I never picked up on that.
If you get a chance, I don't know if you ever watched it. I don't know if you watched it and didn't like it or just never saw it. But
I got up through the 13th episode of season 1, and just like the humor's not for me.
Oh, that's fair enough. It's
Mhm.
definitely quirky. So
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. One last thing I want to bring up. I actually really like the way that Winter Soldier ended. Is that it didn't end with a Captain America one or Winter Soldier one. Is that Captain America just walked away from the fight.
yeah,
And that was the first time in the MCU that we actually saw that, where there's no definitive end to that final conflict. Because Captain America's torn between, do I want to, do I want to destroy, Bucky Barnes, my friend, who's now become the Winter Soldier, or can I redeem him?
yes, yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So yeah, ready to move on to number 9?
Sure.
Yeah. Number 9, Thor Ragnarok. I ranked it at 11. You ranked it at 10.
Oh, we're pretty close there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my second favorite Thor movie. I like the
Mm-hmm.
original better, but I really enjoy this one. Taika Waititi is a great filmmaker. I love Jojo Rabbit this year. I love his What We Do in the Shadows. So yeah, no, he's definitely. I'm glad he's doing Thor 4. I'm glad he's sticking in the Marvel universe. I can't wait to see what he does with Star Wars. But yeah, this movie was just a blast. One thing I will say though, I often hear people say this was the movie that they changed Thor. Oh, Thor became funny. Now
Yeah.
they decided to make Thor funny, and I have to say BS on that. Thor was always funny. If you watch that first movie, Thor's hilarious. Walking into the pet store, I need a horse. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we only sell dogs and
Yeah.
cats. Give me one large enough to ride on. We're gonna throw in his coffee mug to the ground, going,
Yeah.
you know, uh, another. It's like Thor's hilarious. He always was. He was funny in Avengers too. So I completely
Uh-huh.
reject the notion that this was the movie that made Thor funny. Thor was always funny, but yeah, no. Taika Waititi is known for comedy, and this movie is pretty hysterical. So yeah, no. What can we say? Oh, and the team up of Thor and Hulk. They're great together. They're terrific.
Yeah. See, I always feel like that this movie would have been called something different had Marvel held the rights to Hulk, because this movie was basically just the Planet Hulk storyline.
Right, right.
So, you could easily throw Thor in there and just call this, Planet Hulk, and it would still be the same movie. But
Yeah.
you were saying about comedy, I love Jeff Goldblum in this movie.
Oh, Jeff Goldblum's terrific in
Oh
this.
my god. Did you see the second post-credit scene at the
Oh,
very end?
yeah, he's
When
hilarious.
when
Oh,
he's leaving the pod?
congratulations. Your
Uh-huh.
your revolt has gone well. I say we call this a draw.
Hi. Yeah, cause what was he? Was he like the architect or something, or the creator?
The what did they call him? The I'm showing my ignorance to the I'm more of comic book wise. I always say I know DC comics like the back of my hand, and I know Marvel comics pretty well.
Mhm.
uh, so, what was his name? It was wasn't it like the I can't remember, the Grandmaster or something?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember either. Yeah, the funny part is we never mentioned Hela.
Yeah, yeah, or as I like to call her, the Killmonger the first time around.
Yeah. uh yeah, no, what I love in this movie, remember the Stan Lee cameo? When
Yes.
he's like the hair cutter?
Yeah,
All right, just sit still.
that was pretty
Yeah.
good. And Taika
Yeah.
Waititi is the voice of, I always forget his name.
Oh, that rock monster or whatever that
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
Korg, the
Yeah.
Grandmaster. Yeah, Jeff Goldblum was the Grandmaster.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love when Thor got slammed around and Loki's up in the booth. Yes.
He's a friend from work.
uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think anything more needs to be said on Thor Ragnarok other than Asgard really getting destroyed.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's just a fun romp of a movie.
Hmm.
It's just yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. So coming in at number 8 on our list is Iron Man 2. You ranked this one at 12, I ranked it at 9.
Yeah, Iron Man 2. This is a movie that gets unfairly crapped on. I don't know
Hmm.
why. I really like it. I like it better than the first one, actually, because the first one has a lot of originitis. You know, we're in the cave, we're building the art. You got to do the origin. I get it. You got to do the origin. But by the time we get to Iron Man 2, the origin's out of the way. I think we have a much better villain in Justin Hammer. I'm a huge Sam
Hmm.
Rockwell fan, and I thought Justin Hammer was terrific. I always hear people call Whiplash the villain. No, Whiplash was a pawn of the villain. Justin Hammer's the villain in this movie. He hires Whiplash. So yeah, Whiplash is his henchman basically. He's not. So
Hmm.
when people say, "Oh, nah, Whiplash was a weak villain," yeah, Whiplash wasn't really the villain. Sam Rockwell was the villain, and I thought he was great. He always chews up the scenery. I really enjoy him. And one of the complaints I always heard about this was, "Oh, it spends too much time setting up Avengers." No, it doesn't.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. It There's one scene where he and Sam Jackson discuss his file, and he says, "Oh yeah, we think you're unfit for the Avengers. You know, we don't
Hmm.
want you." And they go over his file. That's it. That's the only setup for the Avengers that's in the entire movie.
Hmm.
So
Because I was
yeah,
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up with Iron Man 2 because we were talking about the different phases. How, phase one was just building to the Avengers, and it wasn't until Thor the Dark World that built up to the Infinity Stones. So without Iron Man 2, effectively, we probably wouldn't have the Avengers with all the groundwork that's laid in this movie because this is the introduction of the official introduction of Nick Fury. Because, like I said, post credit scenes back in 2008 really weren't a thing.
right,
And this is also the first appearance of Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff.
right, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. Also, this introduced Rhodey to being a War Machine later on.
yeah, and the first appearance of Don Cheadle as
Yes.
War Machine.
Yeah, because Rhodes was previously played by Terrence Howard,
Yeah,
who didn't
I
come back.
I'm not a
And
huge
I
fan of
and
Terrence Howard. I'm not. I wasn't disappointed that Terrence Howard didn't come back. I never really liked Terrence Howard.
oh, see, back in 2010, I was actually kind of shocked that they recast him. Where it's like, wait a minute, that's not Rhodey. But I was about like, when did Iron Man 2 come out? Was that 2010?
2010, yeah.
So I was going on 14 at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, apparently the way the contracts were written up, because Terrence Howard was the first one to sign for Iron Man, they signed him for Iron Man before they had the role of Iron Man cast. And
Hmm.
apparently the way the contracts were written up, Terrence Howard, if I'm remembering this correctly, made more money on Iron Man than Robert Downey Jr. did.
Okay.
Because Robert Downey Jr. was considered an insurance risk in those days. because he had
Hmm.
such a cocaine problem, and he'd been in rehab so many times. So I think because he was an insurance risk and Terrence Howard was kind of hot at the time, uh, he actually made more money. So when the sequel came around, Terrence Howard was going to get a raise and was going to be making, because everyone was going to get a raise for the sequel.
Hmm.
Everyone was getting their pay bumped up. And it got to a point where they were like, why are we paying Rhodey more than we're paying Robert Downey Jr.? We're
Hmm.
paying the sidekick more than we're paying Iron Man. So I think they tried to renegotiate the contract to bring him in at a lower rate. And he said, no, this is what you agreed to. And they were like, okay, then we don't want you.
Hmm. And I feel this also needs to be brought up. This is the last Marvel movie that Jon Favreau directed,
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
did both Iron Man and Iron Man 2.
I,
Because one of my favorite scenes from Iron Man 2, I don't mean to jump around, but I have to say it while I'm thinking about it, otherwise I'll forget it. Remember Rhodey, where it's like, hold on, I'll hit him with the ex-wife. And they shoot out the bullet, just tink.
yeah. Yeah.
You should have heard that theater where I was at. Everybody was just going, oh. Yeah, that theater was not quiet. Even the women were laughing, which was funny.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's move on to our number 7. That's Avengers Infinity War. Now this is the one where we actually have the biggest disparity, because I rank this at number 19. You rank this as your second favorite.
Yeah. I feel that Infinity War and Endgame were just game changers. I just feel like they really I don't think we ever saw anything like them before. They took 20 movies and brought it all together in a way that I don't think should have worked. I mean, it's almost an impossible task. How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. These movies, they feel big, they feel epic, they feel like you get actual payoff. Like it all feels so earned because it's been earned over a decade. Uh, yeah, I really, really liked, and it's kind of hard for me to separate them, but yeah, no, I love this movie. I think it's one of the best superhero movies ever made.
Okay. Because yeah, I have a much different stance on this than you do, because I actually feel that this movie is way too big for its own good, and you're trying to follow too many events that are all happening at the same time. Because in one aspect you have Iron Man and Spider-Man going up on the spaceship, that eventually leads to Titan, where they fight what's his nuts, Thanos. Then you have the invasion of Wakanda storyline, which should have been in Black Panther. And then you have the other one where you have Thor trying to craft, this hammer and come back down to beat Thanos.
See, I think it all works. I don't think it would work if we hadn't had 20 films of build-up. If you had to stop and introduce every character, if you had to tell us
Mm-hmm.
this is who this is, and this is who this is, and this is, it would not have worked. I think the fact that the groundwork had been laid in all these other movies kind of puts you in a position where they're like, all right, full speed ahead. If you don't know who these guys are yet, sorry, we're we're
Mm-hmm.
here, we're doing it, and this is it. And I don't know. I thought it was a pretty amazing experience. And then the 1 year wait, the wait to see how it was going to tie up. It's like, oh my, it was painful and delicious all at the same time.
See, I wish that Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel didn't come out when they did. Because imagine like that wait between Infinity War, and you have to wait an entire year with no Marvel movies to just speculate what's going to happen in Endgame.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool how I think it worked. I think it really worked. I liked how it seemed like Ant-Man and the Wasp was completely unrelated. We
Mm-hmm.
watched the movie, it's like, oh, this is completely unrelated. But then when we get to the end credit scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we see the dust,
Mm-hmm.
we knew what it meant, and we knew exactly, and it was like, oh crap, that's why he wasn't in Infinity War. He was elsewhere while that was going on, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just like it catches us up. I don't know. I thought it was. And then we obviously saw him send the distress call to Captain Marvel. We never saw Captain
Yep.
Marvel before, and then it's like, oh, by the way, here's who that is. We haven't told you that story yet. And then we get the post-credit scene with where we go back to the pager, and now she shows up. Where's Fury? I don't know. I thought it was kind of it was a cool way to keep the train running,
Mhm.
but at the same time, not disrupt the continuity that they'd created. I don't. I don't know. I liked how it was crafted.
And I'm going to go back to an old point here because I said the comment about Civil War, how in all the other movies it just it didn't really show the impact, but I forgot about Ant-Man and the Wasp in that very beginning when he's on ankle monitoring and they have to
Yeah.
try to work to get him off of it so that he could be Ant-Man. So
Yeah.
yeah, so there you go, the one movie that actually acknowledged the events of Civil War.
Yeah.
So yeah, had to say that before I forgot. So going back to Infinity War, I feel like talk about the two character deaths. That was Gamora and Loki. I'm sorry, but the Loki death did absolutely nothing for me in this movie. Because like I said before, this is now the third time he's died. And and notice how in the movie they have to keep bringing up, oh yeah, I think he's really dead now. Oh yeah, do you think he's dead? Oh, he's definitely down and out for the count now. Because they killed him off so many times prior. That's like,
I
okay.
I think that's where we are with Loki now, though. I think Loki's one of those
Mm,
characters who's just never, ever, ever going to die. But I think they can milk this for the next 10 years and keep making it look like he's dead. And now it's a gag.
yeah. Yeah, because that new Loki series isn't even following the events of Infinity War or Endgame. It's following when he gets the Tesseract back in Endgame and goes back
Right,
to Asgard. So it's now in an alternate timeline. So
right.
that's how they're going to write that off when that show comes out. And going back to Gamora's death, I felt that her death was a result of a plot convenience that her and what's her sister's name? Is that Nebula?
Nebula, yeah.
Yeah, her and Nebula like just happen to know where the Soul Stone is, and it isn't brought up until Infinity War, and then they just then Thanos forces them to go there, and he throws Gamora off the side of a cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which why wouldn't he throw Nebula off the side of the cliff?
I don't think he
Because
loved that.
Nebula's the one that betrayed him.
I don't think he loved Nebula. Didn't it have to, you had to sacrifice what you love the most?
Yeah,
So,
but then that doesn't even make sense in Endgame because Black Widow basically threw herself off.
yeah, I actually had talked about that with my wife. We did a video on it's not there anymore for reasons. There's a whole thing, but we did a video where we talked about the Soul Stone because uh, that was I was saying, how could you throw yourself off if you have to sacrifice something you love? Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know that that would work, but I don't know. And then what happens when Steve Rogers goes and returns the stone after Endgame? Does he get a return on his deposit?
uh, so I mean, I don't think we can talk. I don't think we can talk Infinity War without talking Thanos. What did you think of his motivations?
Well, he's a good villain because he has pure motives in his mind. What he's doing makes perfect sense to him. Uh,
Yeah,
he doesn't think he's the bad guy. He thinks he's the hero, you know? So,
yeah,
hey,
that's good trait for a villain.
yeah,
But I mean, I want to get into this a little bit. I feel that his motives are illogical. I understand that like you want to wipe out half the universe because of the overpopulation theory, and you want to snap half the universe away. The problem is, just give it a few decades, and the population's going to be right back to where it was when you first snapped. So,
yeah. I don't know. I don't know what where you go then.
mhm.
Didn't think it
Because we
out that
find out
far.
in Yeah, because we found out because then in Endgame he destroys the stones, and it's like, okay, then what did you even do the snap for? If you're gonna have to redo that every few decades just
Well,
to keep the
maybe,
population under control.
we just saw people disintegrate. We saw people. Maybe we think that's the extent of what he did. Maybe the snap disintegrated half the people, and made half of the survivors sterile so they can't reproduce anymore.
I mean, I'll take anything at this point. But one last thing I want to bring up about Infinity War. I love Peter Dinklage as that giant troll.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
he was very
yeah,
entertaining.
he's like 20 feet tall. It's like, yeah, okay. Meanwhile, in real life, you know, it's like, here's you, here's Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, we talked about Days of Future Past. He was in that too.
Yeah, yeah, as the head of that the Sentinel project.
Trask, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, ready to move on to number 6.
I am.
All right, number 6 is the first Iron Man. You rank this at 17. I rank this at number 3.
Okay. Yeah, the one that started it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's my least favorite of the Iron Mans. I enjoyed it, but I thought the ending was too quick paced. Like as soon as Ironmonger got in his Ironmonger suit, I felt like he was dispatched almost immediately. I actually think if you watch the first Fantastic Four movie from 2005 and you watch Iron Man, the speed at which the Fantastic Four takes out Doctor Doom at the end and the speed at which Iron Man takes out Ironmonger, I think they're actually very similar endings. So I feel like it's a good movie that kind of craps out at the end, because I don't think the ending's very good really. The final battle with Ironmonger, but also it's heavy originitis, a lot in the caves and a lot of tinkering and trying out different armors. It's a great movie. It's obviously the one that started it all, but I thought they, especially where the villains are concerned, I thought they improved as they went along.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say this, you know, this is where like Marvel's villain problem started, but I think I ultimately forgive it because like, okay, this is the first movie in the series and they're, you know, kind of, you know, you have to tinker it somewhere. You're not going to get it, you know, right on the money the first time.
Right.
And I'll admit this is actually the movie that I've actually seen the most amount of times. And you know, this one to me total rose tinted glasses because like I brought up, I was in the 5th grade when this came out, and this was the first PG-13 movie I could actually go see in the theater. So I do have more of an emotional attachment to Iron Man. So you know, at least I'm willing to be intellectually honest here.
Yeah, I could see
You
that.
know, maybe it's not, you know, the best movie, but the emotional attachment for me outweighs all of the cons that this movie presents.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, and it's the last movie where I can understand Jeff Bridges. Have you seen him in True Grit?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you listen here, Dad Pepper. That man should never take on a role that requires a drawl, because you're gonna have to turn on the subtitles for 90% of that movie. You doing all right?
Yeah, just starting to fade.
All right, so now we're on our top 5. We'll get to these a little more. We'll get through these a little more quickly. Number 5 is Thor. I ranked this at 7. You ranked it at 8.
Yes. It is my second favorite solo film, solo hero, non-team up. My favorite, I said, was The Winter Soldier. I really loved this movie. This movie was just an eye-opener for me when I first saw it, because I'll tell you, as a comic book collector growing up, I think I read at some point in time a comic book of every major character. I regularly collected Batman. I regularly collected Superman. I regularly collected Spider-Man. But maybe while I didn't regularly collect Captain America, I picked it up for a while here and there. I picked up all the major characters. I picked them up at some point in time. Thor, I think, is the one character I never, ever, ever once picked up a Thor comic book. I mean, he might have been in a comic I read. He might have been in an Avengers story or something, but I never picked up a dedicated Thor book, ever. So Thor was always kind of that big stiff who talked the cheesy old English, and I just wasn't into Thor. But I went and saw the movie, and holy jeez, I loved this movie. It was so funny. Chris Hemsworth was cracking me up in the role. I thought he was so good in the part. Loki was hysterical. And the movie, I can't put and I'm not the only one to say this. My friend Dave Perillo, who does the Lunchbox Bunch videos with me, he said the same thing. Neither one of us can put our finger on what it is. I can't point to a certain thing and say, this is it. This is what does it. But there's something about the tone and feel of this movie that reminds me of the first Christopher Reeve Superman,
Okay.
which I think is one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. So I get very much the same vibe from Christopher Reeve's Superman as I get from this movie. And yeah, I love it. I still think it's the best Thor movie, and it's next to Winter Soldier. It's my second favorite of the Marvel non-team up movies.
Yeah. Well, what I would say about Thor is, you could effectively say that this is the only non-superhero movie in a superhero franchise. Because what are you going to do for Thor? Thor's not a superhero. He's a Norse god.
Right.
And so, with this movie, I got more of a prodigal son type of feel. Are you familiar with the story of the prodigal son?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go into it for, in case if someone out there doesn't know what it is, where, Thor and Loki are basically the same character when they take on the ice giants. And so as a result, Odin must punish him and banish him from the kingdom, take away his powers and send down the hammer until he has proven himself worthy and he's let back into the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which also leads into why Loki was considered, one of the best villains of this, MCU superhero franchise. Because if you look at this movie, it's not like Loki wanted to take over the throne of Asgard. He just wanted to be recognized by his father because he was the adopted son.
Yeah.
So Thor would always outshine him in front of Odin. And now that Odin got rid of Thor, now Loki can have all of his attention.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and this one probably had the most emotional ending at the very end when Thor has to destroy the bridge to prevent Loki from carrying out his plans going down onto Earth. And what do you want to do again? Didn't he want to like enslave all the people?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think so. Didn't he wanted to rule Earth, right? Because because he couldn't be the ruler of Asgard. So
yeah, because he wasn't a firstborn son to Odin.
right.
So yeah. So Thor had to destroy the bridge with the thought of, I may never see Jane Foster again. The love interest built up throughout.
Right. Which, of course, did make it a little ridiculous when he went back for Avengers that he never even looked her up. But
well, another problem with the Avengers is how did he get back down to Earth if the bridge between Earth and Asgard was destroyed?
turns out the bridge wasn't that important after all, apparently.
Yeah. No, Idris Elba's Heimdall can just, boom, shoot him down there. Aye. Yeah, so moving on to Avengers number 4, because we've been going for quite a long time. Avengers Endgame. I rank this at number 12. You rank this as your favorite, number 1.
Yeah, same reasons I gave for Infinity War. I just thought these movies we've never seen anything like them before. And Avengers Endgame was the last chance to bomb out. It was the last chance to drop the ball and show that they didn't have what it takes to pull it all together, and they did not do it. They successfully brought this series to a close with an emotional ending. I think we were all pretty broken up by the fates of both Natasha and Tony. Did anyone else die in this movie that I'm forgetting? I think that's it, right?
Who'd you say again? Natasha Romanoff, Tony Stark died.
Yeah.
Could we consider Steve Rogers because he grew into an old man?
I mean, he's not going to be an Avenger anymore, I guess, but he's still there. Yeah. He's still alive. He could show up and give them advice. He could be their Alfred.
Yeah. Because I would say the thing that I liked, with Endgame over Infinity War is now we get back to like a small group, more focused on that original Avengers.
Right.
and how they utilized the quantum realm with time travel was pretty funny. Yeah, where'd you get your time travel education from? Back to the Future?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
The whole thing with turning Ant-Man into a little kid and everything. They had, and
yeah.
the Hulk, man, Hulk was so great in this, where we finally get the
Hmm.
Hulk. It was just really well done.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm going to bring up that I think is a big, not red flag, but a big criticism of mine is Thanos' logic in Infinity War. In my opinion, was illogical, but this one outright makes him look stupid. Where instead of just wiping out half the universe, now he wants to blow everything up and start from scratch. Where he's not going to be in this next universe, but pray and hope to God that the same problems don't happen yet again.
Right. I think at that point he was just becoming more and more unhinged, though.
Yeah, more and more of a narcissist, just like, yeah, I want to kill everything off now.
It was like, oh, you foiled my plans. Okay, well, guess what? Now you've had it. Now I'm just gonna kill everybody.
Yeah, yeah, but I did like the way that this series actually concluded both Iron Man's story and Captain America's story as well, where
Yeah,
they have Captain America go back to Peggy Carter, which is what he wanted all along, because he was at her funeral in was it Winter Soldier?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so now he could finally go back to, late 40s and grow old with her. So yeah, the time travel logic between, where'd you get yours from? Back to the Future. The old man Steve Rogers shouldn't have shown up on the bench, but I wrote that off as, hey, we need to close off Captain America, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. It
Yeah.
just, I mean, there's a few cheats in there, like we get alternate universe Loki and alternate universe Gamora. So hey, guess what? Loki
Hmm.
and Gamora are back, but they're not really back. They're still dead. This is just alternate dimension versions of them. So it's a cheat, but you know what? We
Hmm.
got some. We lost Iron Man. We lost Natasha. There, of course, alternate universe. Uh, Natasha and Iron Man could show up because why not? We've done it already with Gamora. So
Yeah. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, are we going to reintroduce Gamora? Because the Gamora we see in Endgame is not the same Gamora as in Guardians of the Galaxy. Because
yeah, well, I mean, we
she had
left it.
already left Thanos.
Yeah, when we left them off, they were looking for her. So I guess that's what part of what Guardians 3 is going to be is tracking down Gamora.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, ready to get to number 3?
Sure.
Number 3, The Avengers. I rank this at 4, you rank this at 7.
Yeah. Again, this is a game changer. This is
Yes.
the first time we saw a team up movie like this. I mean, other than we've had movies in the past like I don't know, Freddy versus Jason or Predator versus Aliens. You know, we've seen two franchises cross over before, but never before have we seen like what was it, four, five different. Just Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor. Yeah, four different franchises combined into one. I don't think that's ever been done before. Maybe.
Well, I will say this: the Universal monster movies did this back in the 30s and 40s. I think with
Yeah,
House of M.
that's what I was just
Not
about to
not how
say.
not
House of Frankenstein. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
what it is. House of Frankenstein, not House of M. House of M is something completely different.
or maybe like Destroy All Monsters, where like all the Godzilla creatures came together.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, nothing new here was done, but it revitalized that, type of a franchise structure where, you could have a bunch of individual movies all lead up to one big crossover and
Yeah,
crossover. So you could effectively say that the Avengers is a plotless movie since all the groundwork was done in those first was it 5 movies? Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2. Yeah, Captain America, Thor at 5.
that's true. It really feels to me like it's a sequel to Thor, though. Like it feels
Yeah.
like Avengers is more Thor 2 than Thor the Dark World is because
Mhm.
it's following up on Loki's story. I mean, we see the end credits of Thor where Loki sees the Tesseract and it's like, that's
Yep.
something worth looking into. And it feels like this movie's just picking up right where Thor left off. So even though all the other characters are coming in, I do think it feels very much like a Thor sequel.
Yeah. And this is where Hawkeye was first introduced.
Yeah, well, no, that's not true. Hawkeye was
Really?
first introduced in Thor.
When?
He was when Shield had built that structure around Thor's hammer, and Thor had to break in to get his hammer back, but he wasn't worthy. He couldn't pick it up. Um, Hawkeye was one of the Shield agents in there, and yeah, he was.
Was he on top of a tower and holding like his bow down
Yes,
on the
yes.
Thor? Okay. Yeah. So, whoops, I'm not going to edit this out. So, but also this movie did make Black Widow the household name. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
introduced in Iron Man 2, but she wasn't really shown off until the Avengers.
I don't, and I credit that to Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon has
Yes.
always had a real talent for writing uh, women who kick ass.
Mm-hmm.
This was the buffification of Black Widow, and you can see it right away in the opening scene with the where she's being held hostage supposedly, but
Yeah.
she's actually in control of the situation. The dialogue in that scene is so Joss Whedon, and it's just golden.
You just said that Joss Whedon writes women who could kick ass. What I would have loved to see after Black Widow kicks everyone's ass in that one, reach your report and go, ah, damn, no more bubble gum. I know some people will get that reference.
I got it.
Uh huh. Yeah. Obey. Yeah. Well, I always say that the
David Keith
Avengers
was
was
in that movie.
what?
David Keith was in that movie.
Keith David.
Or Keith David. I always get David Keith and Keith David mixed up. I bet David Keith and Keith David's friends get the two of them mixed up, even though they couldn't
Yeah.
be more different. But
Yeah.
no, Keith David though went on to be on. I was going to segue this. Keith David was in that movie, and then he went on to be on Community. See, I keep
Oh.
bringing it back to Community.
See, we were talking about superheroes, and I automatically thought of Spawn. He was the voice of the Spawn series on HBO.
Oh, I forgot about the Spawn series. I used to watch it,
Yeah.
but it's been a while.
Hmm. Yeah, but getting back to the Avengers, I've always said that this movie was the best and worst thing to ever happen to the MCU. The best thing being is that, this cinematic universe structure can work, but after this, every single Marvel movie had to have the humor, even if it was misplaced. And like you said with Thor, yeah, Thor was very funny, but I always got, the humor was in the context because he obviously comes from Asgard and on Earth. He walks into the pet store, give me a horse, and he doesn't understand that like pet stores don't have horses kind of thing.
Right.
So that was the man out of place humor. But after this, it was fight, 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 mid punch. Oh, funny one liner, right back to the fight.
I don't know. That never bothered me. In fact, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of part of the Marvel blueprint.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just later on. It just kind of it really started to like grate on my nerves because like you have this really tense action scene and edge of your seat, then takes you out with the joke, and then because once you get off that edge, it's pretty hard to start getting back to it.
I don't know. I'll have to think about that next time I'm watching one of these movies. But I never really, I never personally got that vibe from them.
Oh.
But,
Okay. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to our number two. Number two, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I rank this at 2, and you rank this at 3.
yeah, love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love this movie. Again, I think it's even better than the first one. I think it's got one of the best villains in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe in Ego.
Mm-hmm.
Just a loathsome. Uh, when you find out, I don't know. I guess we're doing spoilers here. When
Yep.
you find out that he killed Peter's mother, it's just like, oh my God, really?
Mm-hmm.
It's just you just instantly hate the guy. Uh, I and um, oh Yando, he
Yondu.
got Yandu, he got he was terrific in this movie. I mean, the first one,
Yes.
he's entertaining in the first one. He's good. He's good in the first one. But, you know,
Mm,
he's not great. This one, when they really delve into his relationship with Peter Quill and how he was the one who raised him and how he basically saved his life because he didn't deliver him to
yep.
Ego, he just becomes such a more sympathetic character. And when he dies, it hurts you. You don't want him to go. You know,
Yes.
it's
Yeah, and it was after that line, he may be your father, but that doesn't make him your daddy.
yeah, yeah,
And he gives Peter his only respirator.
yeah. I yeah, I love this movie. I love
Yeah.
this movie.
I love the opening with Baby Groot and they're playing Mr. Blue Sky as they're fighting that giant alien.
Yeah, and Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester
Hmm.
Stallone's I'm being visited by my cat. Hello, Jules. His cameo was great. His little role in there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, see, I was a fan of '90s action movies, so I automatically thought of Cliffhanger when Stallone and Yondu reconnect, because it's like, oh hey, like Cliffhanger, except Yondu's not holding him over the edge of a cliff. I don't know. Have you ever seen Cliffhanger?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm, yeah, yeah. They're remaking that movie. Which why?
Huh? I didn't hear that. I didn't know that was getting a remake.
Oh, oh. Yeah, I heard rumblings of it. I think it's only in pre-production, so it could not come out.
I wonder if that's going to be one of those fake remakes, though. What I mean
Yeah,
by
like
yeah, when it's like it's actually a sequel, and we
mm,
acknowledge that the first one happened, and we bring back a couple actors from the first one, but we don't call it part two. So it's like we
mhm.
try to sell it to the audience as like it's something new, but I don't know. It's like Flatliners just did that a couple of years ago. Flatliners, it's like, oh, it's a remake of Flatliners. Oh, nope, uh, Kiefer
Yeah.
Sutherland's there, so it's not actually a remake.
Well, Flatliners was kind of weird because Kiefer Sutherland did not come back as his character from the 1990 movie.
He actually was. He was the same character. Apparently, he changed his name, and there was a deleted scene where they reveal that, and then they apparently cut the scene. But apparently, he was like came back under like an assumed name. Um,
So let's cut the scene that will say that this will make it a definitive sequel and just cause even more confusion. Because
exactly,
at
and
first it's like, okay, it's a remake. It's like, okay, I mean the original's a cult favorite, but it didn't really do well back in the '90s. And then now it's a reboot. It's like, okay, now it's a sequel. How the hell are you going to do a sequel to Flatliners?
yeah, it's and another example is the new Halloween. They called it Halloween. They didn't call it Halloween
Yeah.
8 or Halloween. It's just called Halloween. But
Hmm.
but Laurie Strode's back and it's 20 years. So I call them the fake remake. It's like, oh, we're gonna sell it like it's a remake, but really we're acknowledging the previous film as well. So,
Yeah, and I watched your video on it like a couple years ago when you talked about how now this is like the fourth timeline in the Halloween series.
yeah, the one thing I did enjoy because I kept joking around that it was Back to the Future, like when Doc had the
Yeah.
Back to the Future 2 when Doc had the timeline on the chalkboard and he's like, "Yeah, when we came back here, it created an alternate." I kept saying that's what it was, and then we got a scene in the new Halloween where somebody's playing a Back to the Future Part 2 pinball machine. And I was like, "All right, I got to tip my hat to them. They just acknowledged it."
Yeah.
They just winked at the audience and said, "Yeah, we know."
uh, yeah. So let's go ahead and wrap up this list with our number one. It should be pretty obvious. Guardians of the Galaxy. You ranked this at number 4. I ranked it as my favorite number 1.
Yeah, it's a good one. It
Hmm.
is. Yeah, I love this movie. I like the second one a little better. I think that's a lot of that has to do with the villain. I really liked Ego. I think Ego kind of put the second one over the top for me. But this one is pretty spectacular too.
Yeah.
Dance
And
off at
what
the
I
end. My God, that's amazing.
well, what I was gonna say is that with this cinematic universe, you could effectively say that this is a completely standalone movie. You could not watch any of the other MCU movies and be just fine.
That's true, and it's the same with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as well.
Yep.
Until Infinity War, when the Guardians find Thor, they really have no connection at all to anything going on, aside from the fact that they have connections to Thanos.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, because I know you would appreciate this, I know you're a fan of Farscape and the Jim Henson Company.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is probably like the closest thing to a Farscape movie that we're ever going to get. Because if you think about it, Peter Quill is the only human in a world full of aliens trapped on a ship, except he's not trying to get back to Earth.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. When Star Trek Beyond came out, there were rumors that Paramount was telling them to make it more like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And I got thinking, you could do that. You could introduce a gang of characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy and just give them their own spin-off series. And it's like, oh, here are these other guys that just happen to be traveling around the universe too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what I was going to say is I read an interview with James Gunn back in like 2014 or 2015. He was saying that like Farscape was one of the biggest inspirations for Guardians of the Galaxy, at least the first movie.
I could definitely see that.
Oh, I also forgot the aliens are also convicts because they break out of that prison.
Yes, that's right.
So, yeah. So, I think that pretty much wraps up our ranking. So,
we should also point out real quick, though, that Guardians of the Galaxy was probably the biggest risk that the Marvel Universe had up till then, because most people did not know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. Who were they? They were fairly obscure, and it was proof that Kevin Feige knows what he's doing. You can take the most obscure character around, and if the script's good and the story's good, you can sell it. There's no character that you could say, oh, we should make a movie about the Metal Men. Oh, nobody knows who the Metal Men are. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If the quality is there, the people are gonna see the movie.
Mm-hmm. Because one thing I was also going to say is that this movie made Rocket Raccoon extremely popular. And if you remember in the comic book world, Rocket Raccoon was always like a dump bin, like Z-list type character. But all of a sudden after this movie came out, everyone's got to get Rocket Raccoon.
Yeah. I know we're kind of way off of Iron Man, but one thing I forgot to mention about Iron Man is I remember comics in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s. I grew up, in collecting comics in the 80s and 90s. Iron Man was C-list at best.
Yeah.
At best. If Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, if they were the A-list, and then you said, okay, well, who are your B-list characters? Then I think it would be like your guys like Thor. Iron Man was at best a C-lister. Maybe even a D-lister. He's now one of the most popular superheroes there is. That's all because of the 2008 movie. That movie put Iron Man where he is today.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true, because you could even argue that with the Blade movies. Blade was a nobody character, not even Z-list, until Wesley Snipes got behind it, and then all of a sudden he just exploded in popularity.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember in the early 90s, every time they were making a Batman sequel, I'd hear people say like, oh, I hear Scarecrow's going to be the villain in the next Batman movie. And people would say, no, Scarecrow's not going to be the villain. Nobody knows who Scarecrow is. They wouldn't put him in it. They're going to use a name villain. And the thing I always pointed out is what makes a villain a name villain? Media exposure. Yep. Everybody knows the Joker, the Riddler, the Catwoman, and the Penguin because they were on the 60s TV series. That's why everyone knows them, because they were on with Adam West. As soon as you put Scarecrow in a movie, everyone's going to know who Scarecrow is. And then guess what? He was in Batman Begins. Everyone now knows who Scarecrow is. That's how these characters get exposed. It's not through the comics, because, nerdy guys like you and me read the comics. The the average guy on the street isn't going down to the comic book store. They know these characters because they saw the movie or a TV show.
Yeah. And one thing I feel like needs to be brought up about Guardians of the Galaxy is in the movie version, they actually used the characters from the 2008 reboot, if you remember that.
Yes.
It was kind of a quiet release. It didn't really sell well, so it was quietly canceled. And then once the movie came out, it revitalized the Guardians of the Galaxy because they were basically the intergalactic Avengers. The members would get exchanged out all the time.
Yeah. Apparently Stan Lee wasn't even familiar with most of those characters because he had already stepped down as chairman by 08. Mm-hmm. So when I remember reading interviews with him, and he's like, yeah, I don't really know those guys. They came in after my tenure.
Yeah.
I'll cameo in their movie, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that pretty much wraps it up for our MCU ranking after almost 3 hours.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to go through a really quick listing again, just what the Universal list was.
Okay.
So for people who stuck around this long, as a refresher, number 23 was Thor: The Dark World. Number 22 was Black Panther. Number 21, Spider-Man: Homecoming. Then Avengers: Age of Ultron 20. Number 19 was Ant-Man. Number 18 was Spider-Man: Far From Home. Number 17 was Doctor Strange. Number 16 was Captain Marvel. Number 15 was Ant-Man and the Wasp. 14 was Captain America: First Avenger. 13 was Iron Man 3. 12 was Captain America: Civil War. 11 was The Incredible Hulk. 10 was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. 9 was Thor: Ragnarok. 8 was Iron Man 2. 7 was Avengers: Infinity War. 6 was Iron Man. 5 was Thor. 4 was Avengers: Endgame. 3 was The Avengers. 2 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And at number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy. So, Joe, at this point, I'd like to thank you for coming on and helping me with this ranking.
Oh, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I'm being harassed by a cat right now.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I didn't intend to keep you for 3 hours, but we were going off on all these different tangents, and I'm actually a fan of the type of content where it starts off as like a ranking, but then the conversation can just kind of go anywhere.
Yeah, that's always fun because you never know where it's going to lead you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd just like to make a quick announcement that the PDF of my presentation files will be available on the blog MetrObeliskRadio.blogspot.com, where you can see the Universal list, my personal ranking of the MCU, and Krazy Joe's personal ranking of the MCU. So, Krazy Joe, would you like to plug anything before I let you go?
Oh, find me the usual places, MegaPodTastic.com and YouTube.com/MegaPodTastic. We got a podcast that drops every Friday, and you can get that wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're on Alexa. All you got to do is say, Alexa, play MegaPodTastic Podcast, and Alexa will play it for you. It's that simple. And then the YouTube gets several videos a week, live stream every Tuesday night.
Yep, where you can also find me in the live streams, and you can find my stream-ending jokes, as Krazy Joe can attest to, every time I show up. And I didn't have the time to look up a Marvel joke for this one, so I can't keep up appearances.
All right, well, I could do one. Do you want me to do a Marvel joke to end it?
Yeah, do an interview-ending joke.
All right, I think I did this on my live stream the other night, so you may already know it, but I don't have that many. So what do Daredevil and Scarlet Witch have in common?
What?
They're both Marvel superheroes who dress in red who lost their vision.
Wow. That's a good one. That is a good one. Oh, anyways, guys, this has been a very fun episode. Obviously from MetrObelisk Radio. Thanks so much for coming on, Krazy Joe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.